Chapter 921. Under the night, blood burst out. The huge force smashed the head of the constructor in an instant. However, there was no brain matter in the shattered head of the constructor. In fact, it was not entirely made of flesh and blood, and there were a lot of wood, metal wires, screws and nuts, and transistor-like things mixed in it. After losing his head, the constructor did not fall down. Even, he was able to speak. Is it similar to a distortion field? Good. Good. Unfortunately, you don't know who you are facing. Muffled sounds came from the chest and abdomen, which replaced the vocal cords in the mouth. At the same time, the slender limbs moved together, like arrows shot out, enveloping Mr. Smith. Crack, crack, crack. In a series of crisp sounds, the limbs of the constructor were like shackles one after another, tying up Mr. Smith from head to toe, firmly bound in place. The backpack belonging to the constructor fell straight to the ground. The 4 small wheels turned quickly, and quickly transported the backpack to a distance of 100 meters away. Boom! The flames flickered. The sound roared. The ground trembled, and, soon, the red flames completely turned blue, and a bright green filled it. Another constructor got out of the backpack. He looked at this scene and laughed. Do you feel my passion? You think. Puff! A unique muffled sound interrupted the chatter of the constructor. At some point, Mr. Smith, who had broken free from his restraints, appeared behind the constructor and punched through the constructor again. It was different from the first time when it hit his head. This time it was his body. The constructor was stunned. Then, his head turned 180 degrees and looked at Mr. Smith behind him. In his small eyes, a light like a lamp shone, and countless secret words formed by picture and language flashed in his eyes. Space shuttle? No! It's not just shuttle. There is also a sense of overlap. Interesting. Very interesting. Hearing the analysis of the constructor in front of him, Mr. Smith was not impatient. He pulled out his fist and punched the constructor in the head again. Bang! The constructor's head was smashed. However, Mr. Smith looked at the alley on the side. In his traveler's journey, he could clearly feel that a real constructor appeared there. As for the 2 constructors before, they were also real. It can be said that each constructor is real, but also fake. They are all controlled by a constructor. This scene made Mr. Smith frown slightly. He recalled the puppet Queen Robin. He had met the other party once before. At that time, he was still him. Naturally, the meeting was not pleasant. Him was beaten on the ground for a week, and then he escaped with his own Traveler's Path domain, and this was because the puppet queen did not really want to kill him, otherwise he would have died long ago. It was also because of this that cracks appeared in the rock solid him. It also gave him a chance to regain consciousness. Mr. Smith was grateful to the queen, but he was disgusted with the constructor in front of him, because he smelled the smell of rat meat. Although some unique drugs were added, the base material would not change. Just human meat mixed with rat meat. As a tavern owner, what he hated most was rats. Not only would they scare away customers, but they would also steal his food. That was made by his wife. So, snap! The constructor who just walked out was smashed by Mr. Smith again. But immediately, another constructor walked out. The flashing tufuyu in his slender eyes had stopped. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Confirmed. It's not a secret technique. It's not a talent. It's a domain. It's a domain that only gods can have. Obviously, you are not a god, but you can have such power. Are you a former god? Then, integrate the domain into the talent. Speaking of this, the new constructor trembled all over. He laughed. Great. Great. The flesh and blood of a god, even if it was only the flesh and blood of a god, is enough to make me go further. The constructor stared at Mr. Smith with his eyes, and then took a step forward. At night, the starry sky reappeared. The constructor stepped up the stairs, and began to show his true strength. A full 100 constructors rushed down from the stairs. They all looked at Mr. Smith and smiled. Give me your flesh and blood. Mr. Smith narrowed his eyes. But he could not hide his surprise. The scene in front of him really surprised Mr. Smith. With his experience as a god, it was difficult for Mr. Smith to be surprised. But the scene in front of him was really beyond Mr. Smith's cognition. There was no spirituality. Sublimated phantom. No! To be precise, the spirituality that should have been sublimated was dispersed among the 100 constructors, making the 100 constructors undergo a qualitative change. Although none of these constructors were climbers, the transformation over the years, and the strange blessing of the climbing ladder made most of them begin to touch the entry level, and a few even reached the entry level. A constructor, Mr. Smith did not take it seriously. But what about 100 constructors? Even if they are not truly complete constructors. But the changes brought about by numbers are no joke. Huh? Mr. Smith took a deep breath. He knew that he had to fight hard. His Traveler's path must burn to the extreme, to have a chance of winning. After that, he will lose Traveler's path in the true sense. But is it important? It's not important. He wanted to live with his wife, and then leave this shitty place controlled by death. Parting always comes so unexpectedly, Mr. Smith whispered. He raised his hand and unbuttoned his collar. He needed more oxygen to support this burning. But just as Mr. Smith was about to start, fog started to rise. The gray fog was extremely thick. It enveloped the entire block in an instant. Thousands of undead rushed towards the 100 constructors like a tide. Under the moonlight, 6 undead war horses pulled the carriage across the sky. Melinda didn't even look down, she just stared at Arthur in front of her, with a faint smile on her lips. Chapter 922. Melinda was looking forward to Arthur's reaction. Her display this time was certainly not all. But that did not stop her from wanting to be praised. When Arthur saw Melinda's smile, he knew what to do. He responded with a smile, and then praised. Great. This was a sincere compliment, not perfunctory. In fact, when Melinda invited him to ride in the carriage, Arthur guessed that he might see a spectacular scene in front of him. But, seeing it with my own eyes, it was far more shocking than I had imagined. Arthur looked through the mist at the undead wearing the armor of the Holy Age, looking at the giant undead that was 12 meters tall, and could suppress an enterer with just its strength. He couldn't help but exclaim. You must have spent a lot of time collecting them. No. They are my inheritance. My mother and father left me enough property, their own, and the family and forces behind them, especially my mother's family. You would never imagine that an inconspicuous ring on the finger of those guys, who are about to die, is the medium that ordinary witches want. And they just use it as a decoration. Speaking of her mother's family, Melinda was quite disdainful. Arthur, who knew about this, immediately raised his hand and grabbed Melinda's palm. You know, you are not alone now. I'm not asking you to be cautious. Rather, when you want to do something, I can help you. After all, I am now able to protect myself, Arthur said with a smile. At first, Melinda was very touched. She just hoped that Arthur could support her in this way. But when she heard what Arthur called self-protection, the lady really couldn't help but rolled her eyes. Only when you are about to climb the stairs, do you have the ability to protect yourself? Then what about other people? Ants? Also, is time too tight? If not, are you going to become a god before you go out? Melinda didn't say it, but she was complaining in her heart. But Arthur guessed it by looking at Melinda's expression. Of course. If I can, I will do it. You know, this world is very dangerous. As he said, Arthur pointed to the foggy streets below, and his voice became vague. Because you never know how many people are thinking about you. Who is it? Who is targeting me? The light in the eyes of all the constructors reached its peak. At this moment, their specially modified brains began to calculate together. But there was no result. Even 100 modified brains could not calculate who it was. But he knew very well that this could not go on. He needed to gain an advantage. His clone was entangled by a large number of undead. Then do I need to use my main body? As soon as this thought came up, the constructor quickly threw it out of his mind. Now, he is just facing a disastrous defeat. If he uses his main body, it will be a matter of life and death. Even if this disastrous defeat will make his strength regress to the level of AK, it is better than death. Besides, it is not impossible to recover his strength. It just takes a little longer. But what does time mean to him? After his body was modified, time was the least valuable. Thinking of this, the constructor completely relaxed. However, the constructor still felt sorry for the treasure that was about to be obtained. So he gnashed his teeth when he saw Smith using the entanglement of the undead to smash his clones one by one. At this moment, Mr. Smith was very happy. The last moment, he was about to fight to the death. At this moment, he began to mow down the grass without parallel. Is there anything happier than this? Of course. Any time with Rachel. Support so quickly? This is a bit inconsistent with the style of death. He is not so kind. Do I have a more important role? Mr. Smith guessed in his heart. And he became more and more confident to take his wife away from Niwen. What Mr. Smith feared was that he was disposable. And now? Mr. Smith finally let go of his hanging heart. He began to swing his fists more fiercely. With each punch, a constructor entangled by the undead was smashed to pieces. Compared with before, Mr. Smith was just shooting at a target at this moment. It was still a fixed target that would not move and only had a little resistance. This made Mr. Smith unconsciously think of the game he played with moles in the forest hundreds of years ago. Unfortunately, there was no hammer. Mr. Smith regretted it. And the constructor became more and more hateful. If the constructor didn't have eyes at the moment, that gaze, which was like a physical object, would definitely kill Mr. Smith. Just wait. I will definitely come back. I will cut you into 100 pieces. The constructor roared wildly in his heart. Then, found it. A calm voice suddenly sounded in his ears. The constructor was stunned. In his perception, he didn't find anyone approaching at all. If the other party hadn't spoken, he still hasn't discovered it. What surprised the constructor even more was that there were not just one such person, but two. A teasing voice followed. How can a person turn into a piece of wood? Chop! As soon as the words fell, an axe chopped down the door frame of the house. Pain came. The constructor could no longer maintain his current transformation, and quickly turned back into a humanoid appearance that looked like a stick insect. At the same time, with his eyesight, he saw the newcomers clearly. A middle-aged man with an ordinary face, and a middle-aged fat man with an even more ordinary face. You? The constructor was in doubt. But Acker, Eber would not give him such a chance. The two of them passed through each other's bodies like phantoms, and appeared behind each other. The next moment, the already shriveled constructor became even shriveled. When a spider silk escaped into the shadows around rolled away, like a giant mouth, swallowing the constructor directly. After doing all this, Acker and Eber bowed to the carriage in the night sky and retreated into the darkness. They still had a mission. Arthur in the carriage smiled and nodded to Melinda, pushed open the door, and jumped down. He stepped on the land of Leo Palace. He took advantage of the cover of the fog. He raised his hand slightly. Squeak! The rats under the Leo Palace began to chirp. They obeyed the will of their natural enemies, and rushed to search in all directions like a tide. 17 seconds later, Arthur's mouth curled up. Found it. Chapter 923 Pirate King's Treasure. When you can control a group of rats, then investigating ruins, treasures and mines is divided into 3 steps. Summoning rats, commanding to search, finding ruins, treasures or mines. That's what Arthur did. With the crown of the Rat King, one of Halt's 27 items, Arthur quickly grasped the situation under the Lion Palace. The gold mine is bigger than expected. A completely rich mine. No. It is gold beyond imagination. Yes. It is gold. Gold that does not need to be extracted from ore. From the current excavation location, about 100 meters down, there is a large area of such gold mines. This is certainly not formed naturally. It is man-made. Arthur walked down and quickly came to a secret room. A secret room similar to a study. A desk, a chair. On the desk there was a book and a rudder. A corpse sat upright on the chair. Time had devoured the flesh and blood of the corpse, leaving only the skeleton and some rags. The rats had checked it. There was no danger here. There were only some secret arrays to drive away rats, snakes and insects. If it weren't for Arthur's order with the crown of the Rat King, the rats would never have entered here. Raised his hand and put down the warning oil lamp. Arthur used the end of his cane to move the skeleton's palm that was on the book, then continued to use the cane as an aid to reading, turning the pages. Arthur is definitely not a mysophobia patient. But he doesn't like to fiddle with corpses either. Special ink, paper, makes the handwriting extremely clear. Death deceived me. It is a bastard who uses despicable tricks. On the first page, the bold and large text reads like this. And that it is not a typo. It is the hatred of the owner of this notebook for death. Instantly, Arthur became interested. According to the information, the skeleton in front of him was naturally the Pirate King, but Arthur had not expected that. This Pirate King was also related to death. Immediately, the cane flipped repeatedly. The notebooks passed page by page. The light in Arthur's eyes flickered slightly. Then, the corners of his mouth involuntarily curled up. This skeleton was the former Pirate King Edward. And this notebook was the essay of Pirate King Edward. It recorded many things. There is a young Edward who signed a contract with a white robe who has not yet become death, helping the other party to do some shameful things. And, as his strength and power grew stronger, he developed a rebellious heart. And God war. God were hidden under the 7 Years' War, under the gunfire of mortals, the actions of the gods, and the role played by the white robe. Double agent. In front of the gods, a humble believer. In front of mortals, a persistent guardian. TSK. Tisk, it's really scary. Arthur said this, but his face became more and more interested, because he also saw hidden information in this notebook. According to the habit of pirates, a secret code was formulated, and then the information was hidden in the text. This was of course learned from Old John. Or to be more precise, Old John took the initiative to tell Arthur in order to show his sincerity. According to the rule of choosing 1 in 1 row, choosing 2 in 2 rows, and recounting after saving 7, Arthur quickly deciphered the true content of the note. It pursued the position of fraud. It failed. It became death. But the ritual of the position of fraud did not stop. Blood must know this. The young lion probably knows this too. I don't know what's the point of writing this down. But my ship is useful. I am bound by the contract and cannot get rid of it, but my ship is not bound by the contract. Take my ship and help me kill the bastard who deceived me. It not only deceived my life, but also shattered my hope. I will also make it fail. Make good use of my ship. She will help you. And all this gold. I hid them all under this gold mine. Ha ha, young lion. Since you want to resist death, then he is my natural ally. I don't mind helping him. Of course, I want to tell him. This guy is hard for me to understand. I don't like the way he looks at people, even though he is my ally. On the contrary, Count Nanlos is a very good person, with extraordinary wisdom and considerable strength. Most importantly, he is a knight who keeps his promises. He should be my ally. Right? Arthur touched his chin. He really didn't expect that the old Earl of Nanlos, who was called Waste, could actually be evaluated as the Pirate King. Huh? Unable to help it, Arthur sighed deeply. Hide yourself? Is it because you know about death? Or because of blood? Arthur guessed. But no matter what, it is certain that the old Earl of Nanlos is not simple. Then, Arthur looked at the notebook again. The words on the notebook were so strong that they could be seen through the back of the paper. From every word on it, the young psychic could feel the unwillingness, resentment, and unspeakable regret of the Pirate King Edward. Arthur knew the former. Arthur also knew the latter. Offspring. The old Pirate King's search for his offspring was a secret. But it was only for most people. In the eyes of a small number of people, it was open to the public. Arthur was naturally one of the few. After all, his other best general puppet is now the King of the Near Sea. Under this title, nearby pirates flocked to him. Some of these guys had bad intentions, wanted to gain the title of King of the Near Sea by stepping on his vest's corpse, and some were seeking asylum. The former was chopped into pieces by his vest. The latter was taken in by his vest. It was only a short period of time. Tens of thousands of pirates have already gathered near Coconut Island. Among these pirates, there are many guys with sharp ears and eyes. Each of them has secrets. And when these secrets can gain the favor of the King of the Near Sea, they will naturally reveal them. So Arthur knows a lot. As for the killing, that was done by the King of the Near Sea. What does it have to do with him? Arthur Kratos? Of course, the news from the King of the Near Sea. Of course, it was Arthur Kratos. I heard it with my own ability, so how can it not be mine? Blood? Young lion? It's getting more and more interesting. Arthur collected his thoughts. Unlike Death, who was close to him, that Blood was very wary of him. Arthur shrugged his shoulders, showing his innocence, even though the medium was wary of this behavior. Then, Arthur looked at the rudder. He knew that this rudder would be his greatest gain. Chapter 924. Without hesitation, Arthur manipulated the hand of nothingness and picked up the rudder. Although there were Mises D minors, Arthur still maintained due caution. After the hand of nothingness tried several times, Arthur touched the rudder with his own hand. The next moment, the text appeared. Name, White Raven. Type, ship. Quality, legend. Requirement, 1. The secret text was learned from the notes of Edward, the Pirate King. 2. Take death as the enemy. Attributes, 1. Autonomy 4. 2. Speed 5. 3. Stealth 5. 4. Solidity 5. 5. Space 2. 6. Magic Cannon 3. 7. Diving 8. Burrowing 9. Flying 10. Thorn of the Oath. Note, the White Raven, one of the 4 legendary warships, has an unimaginable speed, and due to the arrangement of the previous owner Pirate King, it is very targeted at death. Autonomy 4. The White Crow is made up of 177 rituals. When you become its master, you can control it with your mind. When you want to use it, you only need to install the rudder on any ship, and it will appear according to the ritual. Speed 5. The speed of the White Crow is the fastest among the 4 legendary warships. Even demigods cannot catch up. Hiddenness 5. When the White Crow is hidden, even if it is a true demigod, it still needs careful searching before it can be found. Solidity 5. The hull of the White Crow is immune to all attacks below the level of demigods, and its own defensive force field can also make attacks below the climber. 1. Ineffective. Space 2. The warehouse of the White Crow has undergone 2 space expansions, and has 2,400 square meter rooms, one of which can accommodate living creatures. Magic Cannon 3. The White Crow has a super main gun, 3 main guns and 36 secondary guns. The super main gun can reach level 3 after charging, the main gun can reach level 1 after charging, the 36 secondary guns have entry-level artillery. Diving. The White Crow can sail underwater. When it is no more than 2,000 meters underwater, it still has super speed. Escape. The White Crow can sail underground. It still has super speed in the mud, but it can only sail at normal speed when passing through the rock layer. Flying. The White Crow can fly in the air. When it is no more than 2,000 meters in the air, it still has super speed. Thorn of the Oath. When you choose the White Crow, when you face death, the White Crow's bombardment will have targeted divine power. Note 1. The White Crow can sail by wind, manpower and other normal means, and it costs gold to open the extreme speed. Note 2. The ship attached to the White Crow can affect the various attributes of the White Crow. Note 3. When the White Crow stops sailing, stealth state +1. Note 4. It takes 180 seconds to charge the super main gun, 30 seconds to charge the main gun, 5 seconds to charge the secondary gun, and gold is needed for each attack. Note 4. Underwater, underground. When sailing in the air, gold can provide sufficient oxygen. Note 5. A large amount of gold is stored in the space cabin. Note 6. When the White Raven encounters fatal damage, it will first transfer the damage to the attached ship. Arthur had heard of the 4 legendary warships a long time ago. However, when Arthur really saw it, he finally understood why the White Raven could be called a legend. It can do anything. It is even faster than anyone. And Stab of the Oath. Looking at the last attribute, Arthur couldn't help but curl up his lips. He had a hunch that he and death would have a battle sooner or later. So what is wrong with having a trump card that can target death? In fact, according to Arthur's character, at least when he shows a card, he should hide a trump card, prepare a higher trump card, and then think of a higher trump card. Ask. Be cautious. Anyway, the blood of his hometown is fully displayed in Arthur. Therefore, Arthur, who only has 1 trump card, is really anxious. So, he became more cautious. He destroyed this secret room. The skeleton of the Pirate King was received by Arthur in the box of Athos. Although it is more convenient to destroy it, but Arthur has already got the other party's relics. So, according to the customs of his hometown, Arthur is going to bury the other party. Arthur thinks that a small island outside South Los is very good. The sea waves, the sun, and the moon alternate. Edward, as the Pirate King, is likely to like it, even if the other party's Pirate King is a puppet being controlled. But Arthur said he tried his best. He just found what he thought was the most suitable. What if it is not suitable? Arthur hoped that the Pirate King Edward would tell him. Then, he would still choose that place. It was not that he was stubborn, but that the words of the dead could not be trusted. As a medium, Arthur kept this in mind. After dealing with this secret room, Arthur waited quietly. Then, soon, he found the fish that slipped through the net. Constructor Kid had never been so embarrassed. Even when he first used his mortal body to snatch the laboratory of Dawn Green Mechanical Gunpowder Cult from a group of mysterious people, none of them were so embarrassed. At that time, he was just blind in one eye and lost his limbs. But what about now? Although he is not blind, his limbs are intact, but his strength has dropped sharply. Now, he has become worse than even the mysterious people of AKA's level. More importantly, the backlash of the main body being killed is still there. At this moment, the cultured body is suffering from a severe headache. Even, it makes him unable to think at all. However, more anger. Assassins! I'll remember you. I'm going to kill you! The constructor growled. It was just this sound. It turned into a low whimper as soon as it came out. He lacked vocal cords, and only used his chest to make sounds. Even, his chest was leaking air. Because he became a miner. The miner who was like a zombie created by him. At this moment, he was blending in. The constructor planned to wait here until the old lion came back. Or wait until the strength is restored. The latter is difficult. It takes a long time. But the former? The constructor believes that it will take at most a week. Everything will be settled. When His Majesty comes back, everything will be back on track. The constructor is quite determined. As for him, he still has a very high value of use, and His Majesty will not abandon him. Thinking in his heart, the constructor is ready to act like the zombie miners around him, otherwise, it would be too conspicuous. However, as soon as the constructor took a step, he found several mice staring at him. Those green eyes made the constructor feel disgusted. There was also a trace of fear that came from nowhere. Then, this trace of fear turned into a sense of humiliation. I am actually afraid of mice? How is this possible? Impossible. Thinking of this, the constructor rushed towards the mice. Immediately, the mice were scared away. Suddenly, the constructor felt relieved. But the next moment, the constructor was sweating. Talk? Chapter 925 Climbing the Stairs. The hoarse and deep voice made the hair of the constructor stand on end. Subconsciously, one of the lion group answered. Okay. Before he finished speaking, the long sword pierced his chest and ended the conversation. The constructor's small eyes widened. It was not a sudden attack, but this person not only stabbed him in the left chest, but also stabbed him in the right chest, and stabbed him twice in the soles of his feet. How do you know my heart is under my feet? The constructor lying on the ground was puzzled. Arthur, wearing the veiled face, smiled. Then, he chopped off the constructor's head with a sword. There was no blood gushing out, but the remaining force rolled the constructor's head to one side. This time, the constructor finally saw Arthur's true face clearly. It's you? Bet? Before he could even say the title of Earl, the constructor was interrupted by a bottle of kerosene. The grease poured onto his face. The constructor's mouth immediately felt a strange sour and spicy sensation. And he screamed in horror. Wait! I can trade intelligence with you. I know something important about your highness. The constructor shouted. Arthur ignored him and directly lit a match, giving him a decent cremation. The constructor knew something Arthur also knew. In fact, he knew more and was more detailed. As for why he had to use Count Bet's face, it was naturally to convey the wrong information to the old lion. Or rather, Arthur was testing, watching the constructor burn to ashes. After letting the rats explore the gold mine again, Arthur just stood in the shadows and waited. He was waiting for the old lion's reaction, waiting for the other party to continue to stay in South Los, or will they return to the inner bay? As for the others, Arthur was not sure. However, if the Blood Shadow Thorn, who was the second of the lion group, and the constructor, were dead, the old lion would definitely know it at the first time. So he let Count Bet show up. He wanted the old lion to mistakenly think that this was Count Bet's surprise attack for the gold mine. Of course, he asked Countess Nanlos to challenge the old lion, which was also to increase the stakes. It was not something like being distracted or distracted. He just needed to make sure that the old lion was not in the inner bay. Only in this way could he maximize his benefits. So will he come back? Arthur waited, and then hid himself deeper. At this moment, Arthur completely merged with the shadow. The only sounds left in the mine were the digging sounds of the remaining zombie miners' machinery, and the friction between their feet and the ground when they were carrying the ore. Time passed by minute by minute. Soon, the night was completely over. Arthur narrowed his eyes in the shadow. How arrogant! Arthur said silently in his heart. It was obvious that, compared to unifying Nanjun, the matter of Niwen was really nothing to this old lion. Or, in his eyes, as long as he could make Lady Nanlos surrender, then everything would be worth it. So, does Nanlos have any trump cards that the other party is afraid of? Arthur touched his chin. Arthur was never surprised that the Nanlos family had trump cards. If not, it would be surprising. If that's the case, then I won't be polite. Thinking in his heart, Arthur quietly left the Lion Palace, and after leaving Kilber Harbor, the psychic appeared on the riverside. Then Arthur took out the rudder of the White Raven and pressed it directly, in a breath. With a metallic click, the psychic turned into the White Raven. From the outside, the White Raven was a standard caravel. Since the appearance of the pirate King Edward, The caravel became the favorite of the pirates in the coastal waters, not only because of blind worship, but also because of its light hull, fast speed, and convenient operation. It can be easily controlled by only a few people. The White Raven is even simpler. It only takes Arthur a thought. He did not enter the captain's room. Arthur just stood at the bow. Then, the White Raven began to dive. Then, it began to sail in a straight line. Neither the water nor the mud could stop the White Crow from moving forward. Once again, Arthur returned to the underground of the Palace of Lions. With the help of the space of the White Crow, Arthur began to collect the pure gold left by the pirate King Edward. He put all the pure gold into the cabin of the White Crow. Then, Arthur began to let the White Crow continue to dive. 2,000 meters underground is not the limit of the White Crow. It just slowed down. When it reached 5,000 meters underground, the speed of the White Raven had slowed to an extreme. This is all right, Arthur thought as he took out the cat bed, dragon horn, tiger claw, bear gull, and wolf ear, and arranged them according to the ritual in his memory. He was going to ascend the stairs here. The last ritual connection was completed, and when Arthur took out the ladder to ascend the stairs, a faint orange light appeared during the ceremony. Stairway to the 17th step, judgment in progress. Has the ceremony orange s big, judgment passed. Does not have cat s nest, judgment passed. Does not have dragon s horn, judgment passed. Does not have tiger s claw, judgment passed. Does not have bear of the violent bear, judgment passed. Does not have ear of the dire wolf. Passed. The orange great ritual has not reached a high level. Is it insufficient to use 29,000 XP points? Orange great ritual, judgment in progress. Physique, judgment passed. Spirituality, judgment passed. Judgment orange great ritual can reach the extreme. Do you want to use 99,000 XP points to push it to the extreme? Looking at the text in front of him, Arthur gave an affirmative answer without hesitation. Yes. Then, a faint orange light suddenly bloomed. The color became extremely rich, like a ball of gold. Then, Arthur heard a meow in his ears. This is the meow of a cat. Arthur was in a trance. He seemed to see the kitten again. He saw the kitten jumping around the strong man, with the tip of its tail shaking excitedly. He saw the kitten turn its head and narrow its eyes, looking at him, and smiling. Then, he turned around and chased the sturdy man's back. Well, the hair on the butt was not only trimmed, but also not sticky. The owner is very responsible. As a cat owner, Arthur's focus is quite different. He almost subconsciously took a glance and gave an evaluation. Immediately, the sturdy man who was originally moving forward stopped. He laughed. It was obvious that he couldn't help laughing. Iolia didn't want to pay attention to it. As the founder of the 17th level, he is not complete now. Or, after he punched out a new staircase of the cat hole, he can no longer be complete. Even if his old friend Herc tried his best. He and Mimi are only temporarily the way they are now. The rest? It takes time. As for more ties? What reincarnation, what destiny? None of them matters. Or they are all fake. He is him, Arthur is Arthur. Mimi is Mimi, Melinda is Melinda. Iolia bent down and picked up Mimi, turned around and looked at Arthur. After thinking for a moment, the golden lion cat always felt that he should say something, so he directly asked, "Have you eaten?" "Yes." "A dinner that was not very delicious, and not very rich." Arthur nodded and replied, "He is him, Iolia is Iolia. Melinda is Melinda, Mimi is Mimi." Of course Arthur can tell the difference. If he can't tell the difference, he wouldn't be standing here now. Seeing Arthur's calm, uneasy eyes, and the clarity in those black eyes, Iolia laughed. That's too bad. After saying that, Iolia carried Mimi and continued to move forward. Mimi in the strong man's arms poked her head out, raised her paw and waved. "Is this a farewell?" "Yes." Arthur smiled and raised his hand, waving. He wished the two of them a safe journey. As for a smooth journey? Arthur would not say so. After all, it is better to be down to earth. And the wind? Who knows where it will blow? If you take off with the wind, there are mountains ahead, you will be smashed to pieces. It seems that he felt Arthur's sincere blessing. Iolia suddenly slowed down. However, the golden lion cat did not look back, and the voice sounded in Arthur's ears. "Can you fish?" "Yes, but not much." Arthur answered truthfully. He had dreamed of finding a place to cast a few rods after retirement. But before he could buy a fishing rod, he was sent here by a dump truck. What happened next? Everyone knows it. The young psychic, who was constantly busy with life, tried his best to seek that pitiful sense of security. It was really heartbreaking. Is that so? If there is a chance, let's go fishing together. After that, Iolia did not stop. He strode forward. In almost 2 breaths, the tall figure disappeared with his cat. The only person left was Arthur. Then, Arthur took a deep breath. Huh? He exhaled the foul air, and took a step. 1 step forward, the difference between heaven and earth. The starry sky descended, extraordinary and otherworldly. The stairs that descended from the sky came with the starry sky. Unlike the 10 steps of others, Arthur's was 17 steps. This destined Arthur to be able to stand higher, see further. At this moment, Arthur has already stood on the first step. There is no pressure or pain as imagined. Everything is so easy and natural. Arthur was startled, and then suddenly realized. Unlike others who rely on self-cultivation, performing rituals, swallowing potions, etc., they are not enough, and even have various hidden injuries, so that the foundation is unstable, and it is extremely difficult to climb the steps. But he is different, with XP points, step by step to improve, and has a solid foundation. Finally? Of course. It was accomplished in 1 go. This is talent. Thinking of this, Arthur's mouth curled up. He took a step forward. From the 1st level, to the 2nd level, to the 3rd level, and then to the 4th level. The whole journey was smooth. And every time he went up a level, his physique, spirituality, was like a baptism again, starting a new round of improvement. Not only physique, spirituality, but also talent, bloodline, death breath, and death intuition. Started a new round of promotion. Death snake. The bloodline began to transform in the true sense. Arthur's intuition told him that, as long as he stepped onto the 5th level, everything would be different. He would become truly safe. But his intuition told him that, if he really stepped onto it, he would lose something very important. Arthur frowned. He did not use faith. He did not take shortcuts to become a V level. Then why did he still have this intuition? Obviously, he overlooked something. Standing on the 4th step, Arthur began to search. Almost the next moment, Arthur found something different. 3 lines. 3 transparent lines that even he couldn't notice without careful inspection were connected to his body. When did they appear? Arthur's eyes flashed with surprise. He was sure that before, he definitely didn't have such silk threads on his body. He intuitively felt that something was wrong. It only appeared when I resisted and continued to step onto the 5th step. That is to say, once I step onto the 5th step, these 3 threads will break? Arthur guessed. Then, the young psychic examined the 3 threads with a more careful look. Although the 3 threads appeared transparent, their thickness was slightly different. The thickest one was like a fishing line. The thinnest one was like spider silk. Moreover, when Arthur focused on the 3 threads, there was a noise in his ears. It came from 3 silk threads. But it was so far away that it was hard to hear clearly. Immediately, Arthur concentrated and held his breath, and moved closer to the thinnest silk thread, listening attentively. Suddenly, his eyes changed. Pale, lifeless, but lively. Lights flickered. Explosions continued. With just a slight movement in his heart, Arthur saw 4 figures fighting. An old gentleman in a black suit, with his hair neatly combed, was fighting with 3 people of different appearances. An old man, a middle-aged man, a young man. The old man had a kind face, like an elder, and was well dressed. The middle-aged man had a simple face, was strong, and wielded a war hammer. The first 2 were not important. After Arthur saw them, he did not feel anything. What Arthur cared about most was the young man. There was no need to look carefully. The moment he saw the young man, Arthur gave him a greasy face. Moreover, for some reason, Arthur always felt a little bit of unexpected familiarity when he saw the other person. A bit like old Charlie? Not just in appearance. More importantly, in temperament. That kind of temperament engraved in his bones is almost 80% similar to old Charlie. Another scumbag? Arthur thought, looking at the old gentleman in a black suit. Although he was besieged by 3 people, this old gentleman did not lose the upper hand. No! To be precise, he had the upper hand. Every time the crown cane was waved, it would bring invisible wind. Wherever the wind blows, even the shadows will wither. Of course, none of this matters. What matters is that Arthur can clearly feel that his talent breath of death is from the same source as the other party. And the middle-aged man with a simple face in the siege roared death, You should atone for your betrayal. Chapter 926. The Land of Death. Arthur looked at everything from a bird's-eye view. Death? The roaring words reached his ears, with information that Arthur could not ignore. The young psychic looked at the old gentleman in the black suit again. His eyes reflected the deep color, looking even darker. Silence. Withering. In the end, death. That is the end of all things, but also a new starting point. After being single and extreme, a brand new beginning unconsciously attracted Arthur's attention. After the young psychic's talent breath of death flashed rapidly several times, the kind of looming inseparability made Arthur suddenly understand the reason for his sudden talent during baptism. It came from death. But, will death be so kind? Impossible. Absolutely not. Arthur's spirituality told this. And the next moment, it was also confirmed that the old gentleman in the black suit saw Arthur's talent breath of death flash immediately. He keenly discovered something. The old gentleman raised his head and looked around. He was searching for the trace of death. His face became extremely ugly. Because he was fooled again. Old Charlie. Death roared in a low voice. But immediately, he was drowned by the rich white light. Not the pale white, but the thunder white. A war hammer appeared in the middle-aged man's hand. Amidst the flashing and bursting of electric currents, the middle-aged man jumped high. Death. You betrayer. The middle-aged man held the war hammer and smashed it hard. And his roar turned into thunder. Boom! In this dead and silent place, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky, and the world seemed to be cut apart. But it stopped again. The old gentleman raised his right hand. The silver ring inlaid with bones flashed. Millions of ghosts surged out. It was as black as ink, like waves, and trembling. The middle-aged man who fell from the sky was blown away with the lightning. Oh, Nanlos, you are still the same. The old gentleman chuckled, looking at the middle-aged man shrouded by ghosts, and continued to speak. Whose alias did you use? Let me guess. Was it your mentor? Elder? Was it your servant? Toth? Or was it your good friend who fought side by side with you? Kate? In the sarcastic words, the old gentleman laughed more happily. Because he killed these people indirectly or directly. Especially that Kate. She was Nanlos's good friend, and blocked Nanlos's hidden arrow. Her body and soul withered together. He still remembered the scene when Nanlos wanted to pick up his friend's body, but the body turned into quicksand, and Nanlos screams. Just like this moment. Roar! Lightning shot up into the sky. The middle-aged man, with a simple face. No! Under the electric current, the disguise was completely gone. A handsome face appeared in front of everyone. Electric arcs flickered at the ends of his hair. At this moment, the millions of ghosts were completely annihilated. Boom! In the thunder that was far louder than before, the old Earl of Nanlos fell from the sky like a thunder dragon. At the same time, the kind-looking old man was covered with greenery. One after another, the virtual vines directly grabbed the old gentleman. You dare to touch me directly. Old hunter, you are really not afraid of death. The old man laughed. Afraid? How could I not be afraid? However, compared to my death, your death, this death, makes me even more excited. Aaron, get started. Sharp! Unparalleled sharpness soared into the sky on the young man. The laziness on the young man had long since dissipated at this moment. What remained was the sharpness of the sword. In the dead and silent land, air currents suddenly rolled up. That was a cry. Moreover, it was longing and obsession. Buzz! In the boundless and silent land, a long sword thrown into the abyss bloomed with endless brilliance. It heard the call of its master. It comes! Without any sound of breaking through the air, the long sword cut through the void and appeared in Aaron's hand. It was at this moment that Aaron began to become complete. The sword and the man became one. It was like a sharp edge cutting through the void. But more of it was holiness and compassion. Sword Saint Ikaros. At this point, you still can't let it go? The old gentleman looked at the young man, calling Aaron's real name. He couldn't help but sigh. And this sigh was exchanged for a sword from the Sword Saint Ikaros. This sword changed the color of the sky and the earth. This sword cut off Arthur's prying eyes. Standing on the stairs, Arthur narrowed his eyes. Old Earl Nanlos. The middle-aged man who looked honest and simple turned out to be the old Earl Nanlos. The dead old Earl Nanlos was actually alive. Not only alive, but also had already become a demigod. That's right, demigod. Arthur standing on the 4th level, can be sure that old Earl Nanlos is already a demigod. Not only is he disguised, he also faked his death. For revenge, he almost gave up everything? Hatred, is that how persistent it is? Arthur sighed, but another young man unconsciously appeared in his mind. Or to be more precise, Sword Saint Icaros. The other person's aura of a scumbag similar to that of old Charlie always made the young psychic concerned. Of course, there is also death. Immediately, the coldness in Arthur's eyes intensified. At this time, Arthur suddenly thought of a saying from his hometown. How can I allow others to snore beside my bed? He is death. The other party is death. It must be old Charlie who did it. The other party's furious look has long shown that he suffered a great loss at the hands of old Charlie. For this, Arthur naturally applauded. After applauding, he was thinking about how to kill the other party. After all, one death is enough. Just want to kill death, Arthur considered. In the scene just now, it seemed that death was at a disadvantage, but Arthur did not think that death would really die. His spirituality told him that things were not that simple. So, he had to intervene. In his own way. However, before that, Arthur looked at the one with the middle thickness. After holding his breath and concentrating again, he moved closer to the thread with the middle thickness and listened attentively. Next, a fragrance filled his nose. It was a strong coconut smell. He stood on the beach. He saw the god of magic potions and god of alchemy halt again. Unlike the previous blur. This time, Arthur saw it very clearly. He saw the revered god of magic potions and god of alchemy climb up the coconut tree nimbly, picking coconuts. The hard coconut shell was torn open by the other party, and a straw made of grass roots was inserted into it. Then, want to try it? Herc raised his hand and handed one of the coconuts to Arthur. Arthur was stunned. Then smiled. He roughly guessed what Herc wanted to do. Before, he had experienced it once. So, after Arthur took the coconut, he raised his hand and snatched another one from Herc. What you gave me must be a clue. But I want to eat coconuts. Arthur said this, stepped back, and returned to the 4th step. The 2 coconuts in his hand turned into 2 notes. To be precise, it was a note that was split in 2. After the notes were put together, a map of Coconut Island appeared. It was very detailed and marked with an X. Next to the X was the word My Laboratory. Of course, this was the front. On the back was a graffiti. A furious child waving his hands, an old man holding a coconut and laughing. A line of small words appeared on the side. Want to eat coconut? I want to give it to you. Looking at the graffiti, and then looking at the crooked boy, Arthur rolled his eyes. Are you a child? Is it interesting? The coconut is not sweet, it's sour. Arthur complained in his heart. But without any hesitation, he directly told his other vest the location of the laboratory. The general puppet on the Coconut Island off the coast of South Los immediately took action. Arthur looked at the thickest thread. Unlike before when he had to wait. This time, before Arthur could react, something changed. Then he was held in his arms. You are finally back. Arthur. My grandson. I brought you back. The voice in his ears relaxed Arthur's tense muscles, and the surging death energy subsided. He clearly felt the wetness on the top of his head, the ends of his hair, and his forehead. He leaned back with all his strength, and saw the old Charlie crying bitterly. He was exactly the same old Charlie in his memory. With silver hair, a tall figure, narrow eyes, and a fox-like look. No! A little different. Even more handsome than in his memory. He was 1.9 meters tall, without the stoop that an old man should have. And there was not a single wrinkle on his face. Of course, some things will not change. For example, tears and snot. Forget about the tears. Looking at the snot getting closer and closer to him, the young psychic tried his best to lean back. His upper body was almost parallel to the floor of the carriage. Old Charlie certainly noticed it. But old Charlie cried even harder. His grandson actually despised him. Subconsciously, old Charlie began to shake his snot. Arthur dodged again and again. At first, it was just an instinct. But soon, it became a man's pure desire to win. Arthur, you want to dodge, but there's still 100 years left. Stick to me. As he said that, old Charlie shook his head, and his snot drew a perfect semicircle, sweeping towards Arthur. Disgusting old man. Get out of here. Arthur bent down as much as he could, letting the snot fly over his head, then he rolled over, raising his hand and picking up the cushion beside him. "Pa!" The snot that was pulled back fell directly on the cushion. Arthur threw the snot-stained cushion into the corner of the carriage, as if he had been electrocuted. He wanted to open the window and throw it out, but his spirituality told him not to do so. Otherwise, he would encounter misfortune. This scene made old Charlie feel relieved. A smile appeared involuntarily on the corner of old Charlie's mouth. "Arthur, you have grown up. I'm sorry that I didn't protect you well before, and let you die in a premeditated accident." "I'm sorry," old Charlie said, with a look of shame on his face. Arthur frowned slightly. After thinking for 2 seconds, the young psychic asked, "Am I really Arthur?" "Of course. Your soul is Arthur. It's just that when you went to that world, you drank 3 bowls of soup according to the rules of that world. I'm sorry. Grandpa had to use this method to revive you. That bastard designed everything the first time, and his ability completely destroyed your body." Old Charlie nodded with certainty. Arthur quickly grasped the information. "First time?" "Yes, the first time. It was a terrible experience. Not only did you die, Drake, Cassandra died. And my dear ones died. So, I looked for a way to change. I cut off all the timelines extending from me, burned an ancient god, and with the help of his anchor, returned to the present," old Charlie explained. "Return to the present?" Arthur frowned. "The future self returned to the present? Then the present self? Could it be?" "Yes, it's just as you think. I'm dead now, on the night you died. However, what's different from before is that I used the future, and the remaining blood of the ancient gods in my hand as chips to make a bet with death. He believes that he is the only one, and everything that is designed will not change. Especially death. Then he lost. Lost? 3 times, old Charlie said, holding up 3 fingers. Arthur sat opposite, began to look around, and then looked at his grandfather. Death was too obvious. "So you got a share of his power?" "Yes and no. It was the remaining rules of the blood of the ancient gods. He who is tainted by this part of the rules will no longer be able to obtain the original sin fraud that he had always desired. So he must give up this part of power. But he doesn't want to waste this part of power in vain. So, scapegoat," Arthur blurted out. Old Charlie nodded with a smile. "But you who were well prepared, but at this time you successfully accepted this part of power. Isn't this the trick of the medium?" Arthur asked back. Arthur is too familiar with the tricks of the medium. This kind of trick of luring people into a trap, Arthur was even more familiar with it. "Yes, I am the medium. So what's wrong with me using the medium trick?" Old Charlie looked as if it was a matter of course. But Arthur shook his head. No. No. Too easy. Everything is too easy. Old Charlie, you are still hiding the key point. Arthur looked at old Charlie. The relief in old Charlie's eyes was even greater. He raised his hand and rubbed the tip of his nose, and said in a lower voice, "I can accept this part of the power of death so smoothly, because I was a chess piece. A chess piece of blood." Chapter 927. The voice was still echoing in the carriage. Arthur blinked. The young psychic sitting opposite old Charlie did not speak, but looked relieved. This made old Charlie very confused. According to his original speculation, Arthur should be very surprised at this time. "Aren't you surprised?" old Charlie asked. "Why should I be surprised?" Arthur asked back. The young psychic leaned back, and after posing himself in a comfortable position, then he slowly said, "It is very likely that he is a child from a commoner's family. He not only knows medicine, pharmacy, and can refine concentrated sulfuric acid, but also can mix gunpowder, make muskets, lead bullets, and mechanisms. He also knows gardening, painting, astrology, and tailoring. He is also proficient in fighting, swordsmanship, riding, and archery. This is enough to surprise people." Then, he came into contact with the mysterious side. No! Not only did he come into contact, but he also stood in a high position. If there is no one behind such a person, it is unbelievable. Moreover, the chess pieces are also very good. When Arthur said the last sentence, the relief on his face made old Charlie raise his eyebrows. "What did you guess originally?" old Charlie asked, holding his cane. "I just said it. I am worried that there is someone behind you." Arthur spread his hands, and immediately dodged sideways. Swoosh! The cane brushed past Arthur's nose. "I like women," old Charlie emphasized, and swung his cane again. Arthur dodged it easily. Of course, old Charlie didn't really hit him. The old medium was still emphasizing. I'm serious about Camille, Selena, little Novia, Yao Jean's sisters, Susan, Emma, Celine, Ai Fu, Charlotte, Wanda, Ginny, Jessie, Pandora. They are all my beloved ones. I will never let them down. So, I absolutely cannot let a man stand behind me. Arthur's scalp was numb by a series of ladies' names. My dear Grandpa, you have a really good memory. Except Camille and Aunt Selena, I counted, you actually have 11. No. 12 lovers. When Arthur said this, he rolled his eyes. You don't understand. Old Charlie said in a tone that you are a child. You will understand when you grow up. This made Arthur sneer. Aunt Camille, Aunt Selena, I have met Grandma Susan. That Celine should be the lady living at 13 Scarlet Lane? No wonder Grandma Susan reminded me that she should have mixed feelings about you. Right? Arthur looked at old Charlie with a strong contempt in his eyes. Ha ha, what a scumbag. Celine is a very lovely girl. But, because of some misunderstandings, I had to leave her. She said she wanted to chop off my treasure and carry it with her. At this point, old Charlie looked embarrassed. Arthur was startled and felt a chill in his crotch. Did you chop it off? Arthur asked cautiously. I chopped it off. Old Charlie nodded. Arthur felt even colder in his crotch, and his eyes involuntarily looked at old Charlie's crotch. Pandora took my treasure back, and took it back, old Charlie explained. Then, the old medium seemed to have thought of something. His cheeks turned red, and his eyes were filled with longing. Arthur would rather be blind at this time. Without asking, the young medium guessed that when he was brought back, old Charlie must have played some game with Miss Pandora. No, not when he was brought back. Before he was brought back. Maybe they started playing. When he thought of the scene of old Charlie lying there, looking at that lady, Arthur shuddered. Then, he gave old Charlie a thumbs up. You are really my grandpa. Arthur was really convinced. Old Charlie knocked Arthur on the forehead. Snap! With a crisp sound, old Charlie looked as if it was a matter of course. Of course I am your grandpa. And, don't be so dirty. We are pure love. Old Charlie said seriously. Arthur. Hey, what are you talking about? You are insulting pure love. You old bastard, he is the epitome of a complete scumbag. Arthur yelled. Old Charlie didn't care. He had been told that countless times. Facing his grandson's complaints, he said with a smile, I don't know what your pure love is. But my love is pure. It's the same for Yevna. It's the same for them. Arthur looked at old Charlie suspiciously. Yevna. Of course he knew this name. It was his grandmother's name. Then, Arthur was startled. You spent so much effort to deceive death. But you didn't participate in the war between the demigods and death. You don't want to take advantage of the chaos to go to the land of eternal rest and bring your grandmother back. Do you? Arthur's voice rose a few notes. Old Charlie smiled as usual. Why not? I swore to your grandmother that even death could not separate us. So, I came to find her. Arthur was silent. The young psychic looked at the old scumbag opposite him. No, it should be said that he was looking at his grandfather, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. Is he a scumbag? Really a scumbag. Does he love me? Really love me. As long as it is needed, no matter what, I will give it to him. And, even death cannot stop him. Is this his pure love? Arthur didn't quite understand, but was greatly shocked. And just when Arthur felt a little moved, old Charlie continued. Just like Maria, Joe, Veronica, Polly, Morgana, Wallace, Joan, Eli, Clara, Ball, Verna, and Mary. I swore. I must bring them back. Old Charlie's face showed a firmness that would make even a fanatic look at him. However, the content of his words was enough to make anyone despise him. Okay. Your pure love is great. But as a qualified psychic, I think you are disturbing their sleep. It is not a good idea to disturb the dead. Arthur didn't know what to say. At this moment, Arthur was just complaining. Old Charlie still kept smiling. He still looked like, you don't understand now. You will understand when you grow up. This look made Arthur want to punch him. 26. What a scumbag. Excluding his grandmother, old Charlie actually had 26 mistresses. If his grandmother is included, there is one more than the spelling of A, B, C, and D. There is no doubt that the lady who was given the mine mentioned by Grandma Susan before is also among them. As for which one, Arthur didn't want to ask. He was tired. He wanted to know more about blood now. Old Charlie saw Arthur's thoughts. The old psychic didn't hesitate. Directly said, "The war between that bastard and death has never ended. After the 7 Years' War ended, the war went from open to secret. Faced with death claiming to have complete victory, blood was disdainful. This bastard began to train hidden players, preparing to teach death a lesson. And I am one of them. I and 96 other talented young people were selected. I am the one who survived to the end. It was a combination of luck and premeditation." Premeditation? Arthur couldn't help but interrupt. Although he knew it was rude to do so, the young psychic still couldn't hide his surprise. In the war between the two gods, there was actually another force intervening. In an instant, a face appeared in Arthur's mind. The face he had just seen. The young man. The Icaros known as the Sword Saint. In an instant, the other party's scumbag aura and old Charlie inexplicably overlapped. "Is it Icaros?" Arthur asked tentatively. "As expected of my grandson. He has perfectly inherited my psychic bloodline. Yes, it is Icaros. He is my adoptive father. He is also my mentor. He adopted me to deal with death. Blood also discovered this. But their goals are the same. So these two guys acquiesced. And I, at that time, was a chess piece. What could I do? I could only pretend to be compliant." Old Charlie spread his hands and shrugged, looking helpless. Arthur could see that old Charlie had complicated feelings towards his adoptive father. Maybe this is also the reason why old Charlie didn't want to participate in the war. Arthur thought in his heart. Old Charlie did not hide it. For their war, I lost too much. I don't want to participate in it anymore. This is why I successfully obtained half of the power of death. The contract of that bastard is quite perfect. I don't want to work for those bastards. So, I set a stage for them. Let them fight each other. Your stage is really big. What about the ancient god you mentioned?" Arthur continued to ask. Old Charlie still looked like he knew everything. "It should be the god of war. The self-proclaimed founder of the Golden Age, the winner of the Age of Gods, but in fact, he is just an impostor. The real god of war has long fallen. He just got the armor, sword and chariot of the god of war. Therefore, he wants to become the real god of war. And this is the origin of the Shadow War." Speaking of this, old Charlie's eyes flashed with disdain. He thinks he is not a good person, but compared with this bastard, he was a great good man. And the other party was a complete beast. He not only killed his father and mother, but also his wife and 2 children. He used this as an excuse to start a war. That guy could not be? Arthur guessed. Old Charlie nodded. Of course, it's the Emperor of the Empire. Apart from that bastard, who can make the entire empire run? Old Charlie couldn't help but open the car window and spit outside to express his dissatisfaction and indignation. Terrible ambition. An endless desire. This terrible monster was created. In fact, this crazy guy was almost successful. Old Charlie's words made Arthur interested again. Who stopped him? The people closest to him were the court wizard Chariko, court jester Harrington and court lady Liz. Under Harrington's cover, Liz stole the guy's sword, the carriage. Then, Chariko used his own blood to contaminate the armor. The emperor who lost the god of war's treasure was beheaded by the librarian Hulk. In just a few words, Arthur seemed to have seen a thrilling battle. Court wizard Chariko, court jester Harrington, court lady Liz, and god of magic potion, god of alchemy Hulk. Any one of these 4 is a character that cannot be ignored by the world. But when facing the emperor, it takes 4 people to plan an attack together. And this is still the premise of losing the 3-piece set of God of War. From the small to the big, Arthur can already guess the power of the 3-piece set of God of War. No wonder such desire is aroused. The power of the 3-piece set of God of War is really terrible. Arthur sighed. 3-piece set of God of War? It's a good name, much better than the so-called treasure. Old Charlie likes this name very much. Where did the 3-piece set of God of War go? Arthur asked subconsciously. Old Charlie rolled his eyes directly. If I knew, I would have gone to look for it long ago, and I wouldn't have to pretend for so long. Rumor has it that it was the Lady Liz who hid it, and there are also rumors that the Master Herc threw the 3-piece set of God of War into the turbulence of time and space, and there is also a saying that the court mage Chariko completely contaminated the 3-piece set of God of War with his own blood. Xiaoliku has a considerable amount of fairy blood. Therefore, during the Holy Age, when the popes launched the war in the name of Shadow War, in addition to eliminating dissidents, most of them were searching for the 3-piece set of the God of War, and hunting for fairy blood. They believed that people with fairy blood might know the whereabouts of the three-piece set of the God of War. Unfortunately, they found nothing. Instead, their finances were in jeopardy. Finally, on the ruins, the Silver Age was born, old Charlie said, and paused here deliberately. He looked at his grandson with a quiet look. This quiet was too obvious. Of course Arthur saw it. Almost instantly, Arthur guessed something. However, the young psychic said nothing. The older psychic knew it all. The two smiled at each other. Then, Arthur asked another question in his heart. Winters and my mother? What happened to Baker Farm? Blood? Or death? With the existing clues, Arthur could easily guess what happened at that time. It was nothing more than blood or death trying to use his parents to force old Charlie. The result? It was obvious. Old Charlie sighed. You want revenge? Although I drank 3 bowls of soup, I don't have any more feelings for Winters and the others. But I think I should do something. Arthur was very frank. Such a confession made old Charlie a little nervous. Don't look at me like that. Although you are an old scumbag, you are really good to me. I will try my best to treat you as a grandfather. Of course, I think it will take some time, Arthur said truthfully. Okay. Old Charlie smiled. He was sure that Arthur would admit his identity, just as he was sure to pull Arthur's soul back. So, he didn't pause. Old Charlie gave the answer both. Chapter 928. Hearing old Charlie's answer, Arthur sighed helplessly. Having an excellent grandfather, it's really stressful. There is no doubt that the Winters couple, Arthur's parents, died in the struggle between blood and death for old Charlie. As old Charlie became stronger, he showed many excellent qualities. How could blood and death not want to completely control old Charlie? As long as they are human, they have weaknesses. Old Charlie is no exception. Old Charlie's weakness is his family. So, blood and death attacked the Winters couple. The result? Arthur, who already knew the answer, looked at old Charlie, who was still smiling, as if he had long forgotten the death of his son and daughter-in-law. But the index finger, middle finger, and ring finger of his right hand on the cane were tapping in a very rhythmic manner. This was the secret language of the medium. In other words, this is one of the secret codes designed by old Charlie for the Kratos family. In order to deal with different situations, old Charlie designed 5 special encryption languages, and finger tapping is just one of them. The current secret code roughly means that he will continue to attract the attention of the 2 bastards, and then let Arthur kill the 2 bastards. Arthur, you are also good enough, old Charlie said while tapping the secret code. Of course. Arthur raised his head and crossed his legs. His toes swayed. Of course. This was also a secret language. After that, the 2 of them talked on the surface, but they kept whispering to each other. Arthur, it's a bit difficult. Old Charlie, everything depends on human effort. Arthur, as my dear grandfather, don't you plan to give me more help? Old Charlie, going to the eternal resting place is the best help I can give you. Arthur, well, thank you for your help. But I think you can give me more. I am your only grandson. Old Charlie, this kind of unswerving persistence is very much like me. Arthur, thank you. Are you trying to say shameless? Old Charlie, as a medium, you should be more tactful, which is good for you and the client. Arthur, thank you again. Let's get down to business. We will talk about the experience of mediums later. Old Charlie, ritual, the ritual arranged by death, the ritual of fraud that he dreamed of becoming the original sin still exists. That will be the key point. Arthur was shocked. The original sin deception ritual that was arranged was not destroyed? It was natural that it was not used. If death was used, it would not be death. What really surprised Arthur was that a ritual of this level was not destroyed. According to common sense, blood should have destroyed this ritual. Wait! Death chased the original sin. Why can't blood? Arthur guessed a lot in his heart instantly. His toes did not stop shaking. Arthur, where? Old Charlie, being watched closely by 2 bastards, being watched by a group of disgusting guys. Do you think I have a chance to find him? Arthur, that's right, my dear grandpa. Besides this, I think I need help. Old Charlie almost rolled his eyes. At this moment, he was very sure that, although he had experienced reincarnation, this was his own grandson. Otherwise, it would be impossible to be so like him. How are Drake and Cassandra doing? Old Charlie did not talk in secret language anymore, but asked directly. This is what an old father should be like. It is also a reminder from old Charlie, as a grandfather, to Arthur. Family, Arthur can rely on his family. Okay. Okay. I am the only muggle in the family. Old Charlie's reminder brought back unpleasant memories for Arthur. The young psychic did not hide anything. The complaints continued. What's wrong with telling me in advance? I can't drag the Kratos family to its destruction. Old Charlie interrupted Arthur's words. In Arthur's confused words, Old Charlie said very seriously, I have seen countless possibilities. Only this one can keep you alive. Only this one can reunite my family. The rest are not good. For example? Arthur raised his eyebrows. Curiosity flashed in his eyes. For example, you just woke up and completely abandoned your bottom line, muttering skulls for skulls, and slaughtering the entire South Los in a terrifying hunting posture. Then, you met a strong man wearing a mask, and were torn to pieces by him. For example, facing the threat of the sheriff, you directly drew a 9, and chose to go along with the crowd, and began to play with others, starting a war again, sweeping the South County, the North County, near the sea, the war in the distant sea, and the West Coast. Finally, just when you were about to become a new god, you were nailed to death in the starry sky by a girl with a cat. Your blood became a synonym for filth, your name. Even more. It became a curse. For example, after discovering the benefits, you began to lick Melinda relentlessly finally. After squeezing Melinda dry, you went to lick the Countess. After squeezing her dry, you set your sights on the Grand Duke of Swallow Castle. You just kept licking. 10 years later, you stood at the top of the world, and the old lions were killed by the women you licked. You are about to become the new emperor. However, the night before you became the emperor, you were chopped into pieces by the women you licked. Each of them took a piece of you and returned to their hometowns. For example, you are used to using your brain, and you no longer appear in front of the stage. You planned for 20 years, and finally threatened the whole world in the name of Shadow. You forced those strong men into a desperate situation, but the old lion in despair. The tigress burst out with unimaginable strength. The two tore off your disguise, and then killed you on the beach of South Los. And finally, Melinda took your body to Coconut Island. She buried you where the sun rises, and silently watched you until the end of your life. For example. Okay. That's enough. Wait. Stop. Arthur stopped Old Charlie with a series of words. It's not that he didn't believe it. It's just too miserable. He, Arthur, doesn't have a good ending? Why are they all so miserable? But Arthur didn't doubt the truth of it. He knew himself too well. He could really do those things. Of course, some things still need to be clarified. What about me under these possibilities? Gone. When I pulled you back from the extreme faraway land, they disappeared. They were your possibilities. When you appeared here, these possibilities disappeared. Or you could say, you became the only one in fate and reincarnation. Your possibilities became your nourishment. That is to say, if I die, is it really dead? Arthur focused on this key point. Old Charlie nodded. And emphasized. This time, it's like this. Arthur raised his left hand, put it to his mouth, and pressed his raised fingers on the bridge of his nose. Then, he raised his right hand again, and placed his index finger on the right side of his nose. This scene stunned Old Charlie. Fate. Choice. Should I go left or right? Arthur sighed. Old Charlie flicked Arthur's forehead. Whether it's left or right, time will tell you that it's the best choice. Don't be confused by the present. And don't be bound by the past. You have to look forward. Don't look back. Old Charlie said this. And the car door opened silently. Obviously, this conversation was about to end. Moreover, it ended much faster than Arthur had imagined. When Arthur wanted to say something, he was grabbed by the collar by Old Charlie and thrown outside the car door. Then, he kicked him in the buttocks. Go! Arthur fell forward. The next moment, he once again stood on the fourth step under the starry sky. The three faint threads all broke at this moment. As long as he took another step, Arthur would be able to step onto the fifth step, become a god in the mouths of all living beings. Moreover, he is not a false demigod who relies on the power of faith. He is a demigod in the true sense. However, Arthur stopped. The unprecedentedly active spirituality keeps reminding Arthur that, if he takes this step, he will lose something extremely important. The sudden feeling is like a hungry stomach at 12 o'clock in the middle of the night, protesting, wanting to eat barbecue hot pot crayfish. It is so hot and fierce. Arthur was a man who listened to advice. He put down his raised leg. He stood still, took a deep breath, looked at the flashing words in front of him. Ritual 17 stage completed. Physical strength plus 10. Spirituality plus 10. 17th stage. A new path opened up by Aeolia. This golden lion cat burned all of himself, built a path that had never been seen before with his unyielding faith, and Mimi made it easier for those who came after him to embark on this path. He also burned himself, and opened up all the 1 to 4 levels, which allowed the later ones to have powerful strength more quickly, and the road ahead would be smoother. Moreover, he had the adaptability, recovery, endurance and amplification that other people who took the precepts, indulged, and swore rituals did not have. Effects: 1. Pseudo-precepts. 2. Feast. Carnival. 3. Super healing. Extreme. 4. Adaptability. Extreme. 5. Golden thread. True. 6. Big body. Giant. 7. Thick flesh. Armor. 8. Ladder. 4. Take the precepts. False. When facing food, you can be picky, but if you start eating, you don't have to finish it, but the next time you face your favorite food, you can only eat half. There is at least 2 hours of sleepiness every day. You can stay awake for a long time, accumulate together. When it reaches 240 hours, you need to take a 24-hour-long sleep. During the accumulated sleep, you will not feel sleepy, and it will not affect any strength. At the same time, you can also sleep for 24 hours in advance, accumulate, make yourself more comfortable, and, under normal circumstances, when you encounter sleep, psychic secrets, you will be alert instantly. When you are sleeping, when someone with malicious intent approaches, you will quickly wake up. Feast. Carnival. After ascending the stairs, you, who have the stomach of the phantom whale, have once again made a qualitative improvement. Not only will the food you eat be completely digested, converted into body muscle, fat, to make the body grow slowly, and you can also store enough food by eating, to use it as a backup. When you need more strength, you can burn the food in the stomach to increase rapidly. At the same time, your food category has long exceeded the defined protein, carbohydrate, fiber, etc. Even if it is a stone, you can now taste the saltiness. Of course, if it is a secret item, you will get greater satisfaction. Current food, 900/30,000. Super healing. Extreme. Facing injuries. When in a negative state, you have excellent recovery ability, but you can still speed up recovery through sleep, food, even if it is a fatal injury. For you now, it means eating a few more bites, or taking a nap. Current sleep, 0/240. Current food, 900/30,000. Adaptive state. Extreme. Facing strangers, in extremely harsh environments, you can adapt more quickly. When facing special requirements for props, you can greatly reduce the demand. When you are in flames, frost, poison, lightning, mental field, and illusion field, you can use the food accumulated in the illusion stomach to strengthen your resistance. Current food, 900/30,000. Golden silk. True, after ascending the steps, the golden silk is the real golden silk. As time goes by, the harmony value you can achieve will steadily increase. Make your spirituality safer, and your physique will also increase at a rate more than twice the harmony value over the years. Big body. Giant. After reaching the level, your body becomes bigger and bigger, and your spirituality, physique and characteristic upper limit undergo a qualitative change. Thick flesh. Armor. Completely relying on the strong physique. Food energy accumulated daily to form a special defense, a hybrid defense method between simple physique and force field. Any attack method targeting physique or force field alone will be considered invalid, and then swallowed by you to become a new food air. Only when a mixed attack is used can it really touch you. The current food air, 999. Stair point 4. When you step onto the 4th step, you will have a 40% overall enhancement. At the same time, your phantom will have substantial attack power, and when the phantom is broken, you need time, gold, sunlight or moonlight to repair them, but you will not be hurt, but your amplification will disappear. Note 1. If the receiving precepts fake is not completed, the spirituality will not be disordered. Only when the receiving precepts fake is not completed for more than 9 times in a row, the spirituality will be disordered for a short time. When the receiving precepts cannot be completed for 27 times in a row, golden silk. True. Big body. Huge. Thick flesh. Armor will be damaged, but can be repaired by the food in the stomach. If food chi is added, it will speed up the repair. Note 2. When facing the food you like, food chi will accumulate as you eat. When facing food that is toxic and full of malice, precepts fake can ignore it, and can greatly accumulate food chi. Note 3. Under the blessing of feast. Carnival. As the physique increases, the climber will break through the original size limit faster. Note 4. The 17th level can more perfectly integrate the other cat sect rituals in the other cat caves, and can also optimize and accommodate other sect rituals to a limited extent. When facing the spirituality brought by the secret props, it has extremely perfect tolerance, and can quickly distinguish the residual, hidden evil spirit on the props. Note 5. When the climber learns other sects, secret rituals, secret arts, the new 17th level not only has strong adaptability, but also can greatly reduce the requirements of secret arts, rituals, and as time goes by, the adaptability becomes stronger and the requirements are reduced more. Note 6. When the spirituality of the superimposed secret props is adjusted and exceeds its own limit, appropriate extreme will keep the recipient unaffected for a short period of time. Note 7. Feast, carnival, super healing, extreme, adaptability. Extreme will slowly increase with the passage of time, and the existence of big body. Huge will further increase the upper limit of many ritual characteristics, blood characteristics, and talent characteristics. Note 8. Your phantom is affected by swordsmanship, rituals, etc., and is divided into 2 layers. The outer layer is snake and bird, and the inner layer becomes a cat. Snakes and birds can merge into bird snakes, and cats can bring you 9 times of immunity to fatal damage. After 9 times, the cat will fall into a deep sleep. You will need a long time and a huge amount of food to recover. This is similar to the rumored secret of the cat cave. 9 lives, but it is different. This is a unique feature of the 17th level. The words gushed out like a fountain, appearing in front of Arthur. Arthur's mouth curled up. He was very happy. Because this is not the end. Chapter 929. The words that appeared in front of Arthur continued. Death Snake 1. When you stepped onto the steps to God, the trace of power left by the golden tree sap in the scales of Citadel was completely absorbed by your gift breath of death, and it began to purify your blood in a unique way, and the incomplete blood was not only completed at this moment, but also given a higher growth space. As time passed, more predation. The blood will improve itself. Death and the snake will entwine and run parallel. Death chases the snake's tail, the snake's kiss chases the death's aura. In the repeated cycles, the most unique way of promotion appears. This uniqueness in your blood is enough to make most gods and demons look at you sideways, make those ascenders envious, and even make the dark, gloomy, and dead things afraid, because they all know the terrifying combination of your talent that is not human and your blood at this moment. Even demigods are unwilling to face your edge. Effects: 1. Awakening. 2. Hide in the shadow. 3. Body. 4. Snake eyes. 5. Snake language. 6. Swallowing recklessly. 7. Snake breath. 8. Snake shadow. 9. Authority. Remnant. Awakening. You have awakened a special bloodline. Now you become different. Physique plus 20. 3 plus 2 plus 5 plus 10. Spirit plus 20. 3 plus 2 plus 5 plus 10. Hide in the shadow. When you are in the shadow, in the darkness, you will get a stealth plus 9 correction. And to a certain extent, you can control shadows and darkness, allowing them to form attack, defense and auxiliary forces. Snake body. Your body joints and muscles are not only flexible like a snake, but also allow the whole body to be winding and coiling like a snake. At the same time, when facing swords, muskets, explosions, and flames, the defense level is plus 6. And when facing acid and poison, the defense level is plus 8. When facing thunder, defense level plus 27, and when there is enough food, your body will grow rapidly beyond the limit, and will be given a physique, defense, lifespan to match, and you can freely control the size of your body. Even in winter, you can easily control the drowsiness in your instinct. Of course, if you choose to hibernate, your body will grow faster, and if you refuse to hibernate, the growth rate will remain the same, and your appetite will become better. Food will become an extremely important resource for you. You need more food to promote the advancement of your bloodline. 0/3000. Snake eyes. Look at others with snake eyes. The creatures below the steps will be instantly shocked. If the other party is in a panic during the deterrence, they will also fall into hallucinations. The creatures in hallucinations will be dragged into the realm of death. The creatures on or above the steps, you need to make a will judgment. But if the will judgment fails, you will be shocked, fall into panic, hallucinate, and be dragged into the realm of death. Snake language. You can communicate with snakes with snake hiss, command ordinary, secret, and advanced snakes. Even legendary snakes will be intimidated by you, even if you don't communicate with snake hiss. Snake creatures will still respect you and want to follow you. Rampant swallowing. You can open your mouth to a degree beyond your own limit, and you can swallow anything smaller than your mouth. Moreover, you can ignore the toxins of the entry level and below contained in the food you swallow, sourness, dark energy, etc. Even stones and metals can be digested and absorbed by your stomach, turned into the purest nutrients to nourish your body. Snake breath. The gas you exhale can turn into a highly toxic miasma of the entry level at any time. Your saliva will corrode the earth. When you want, you can turn most of Nanjun into a poisonous miasma swamp country in one hibernation. And when you don't want to, you are a normal person, you can kiss your beloved girl at any time. Snake shadow. The resonance of the breath of death and blood, the qualitative change of ascending the steps, let your shadow, which has already changed, be completely promoted. It can turn into 333 snake shadows, silently attack the person you want to attack in your field of vision. When the attacked person dies, it will turn into the purest breath of death and be brought back. Authority. Secondary. Different from the snake wings ignited by swordsmanship, Citadel possesses the authority of the god of the inner sea, and ascending the steps completes the authority. You can easily control water within a considerable range. And when you stand on the inner sea, you can make the inner sea churn endlessly. Note 1. The physical and spiritual energy brought by awakening are absolutely safe. As you eat more food, hibernate, and grow slowly. Note 2. When hiding, running fast will not affect the hiding level. And in the light, when the body is fully exposed, there will also be a +3 stealth correction level. Note 3. The snake body can reach 12 meters at this stage, and the current normal lifespan is 999 years. When it remains in the normal state, the defense level is naturally increased by +3. When you release your own restrictions and reach 12 meters, the natural defense level is increased by +9, and the defense level against thunder is increased by +49. At the same time, in order to complete the promotion of bloodline, you need more gold, mysterious side props, and doom items as food. Note 4. Each one defense level is about the explosion level of the major arcana. Note 5. When you complete a deep sleep, will be full of energy, and will recover faster. Note 6. The initial attack level of each snake shadow is equivalent to the power of a bullet fired by a heavy musket. The snake shadow can turn, and can also track the target. Every time the snake shadow completes an attack, if it absorbs enough death energy, it can continue to attack and increase its own attack level. The highest is Arcanal level, but it will consume death energy. When death energy is insufficient, you need to return to your shadow to replenish the death breath, but the next time you attack, you will still attack with the power of a heavy musket firing a projectile. At the same time, after completing an effective attack, you can stop attacking and bring back the death breath for you. When all the snake shadows attack, your shadow will fade, but it will not disappear. Note 7. Ritual Cat Orange Big 17th level. Under the harmony of your talent, there is no conflict with your bloodline, but it complements each other. Note 8. The power of your water control cannot exceed the step. When standing on the inner sea, the water control power is step 5. It is not breath of death, but the bloodline becomes complete. Arthur knows very well that if the former wants to be promoted, he needs the cooperation of death, and the cooperation of the other party must be involuntary. But this is not important. The harvest in front of us, it was enough to surprise Arthur. Crack, crack. Arthur shook his neck left and right. Immediately, there were bursts of crisp sounds. Not only the neck, but the bones and joints, muscles and fascia all over the body, all made pleasant sounds at this moment. This was a qualitative change. It was also what Arthur had been looking forward to for a long time. Strong and thick armor has always been favored by Arthur. Arthur knew very well what a strong body would bring, and what an unbreakable defense represents. Unbeatable. Invincible in the true sense. Of course, he still needs a good midnight snack to reach that level. The starry sky converged. The steps disappeared. The young psychic picked up a piece of pure gold, as big as a basketball, and stuffed it directly into his mouth. In just a moment, the gold melted. The taste was like hot cocoa with sugar, and the texture was like marshmallows. Of course, the data was even more delightful. Originally, the bloodline was promoted 0/3000, it increased by 30 points, becoming 30/3000. This made Arthur's mouth curl up. In the environment he was in now, he lacked everything except gold. And this was the reason why he came here. He resisted the desire to grow bigger, maintained his current body, and began to eat the pure gold nuggets one bite at a time. while Arthur was eating supper. Barrow Hamlet was in the study with a gloomy face. In front of this gentleman, there was a flashing communication crystal. The voice of impatience was coming out of Barrow's mouth. Why? Why can't I control my emotions? I can't even think normally now. I am so angry that I want to tear everything I see into pieces, Barrow said, and slammed the table. Bang! The table was shattered. Looking at the broken table, Barrow felt a sense of pleasure in his heart. And driven by this pleasure, he began to smash things crazily. Of course, the only remaining rationality, so that Barrow didn't smash the communication crystal. Huff! Huff! In less than 3 minutes, there were no intact items in the study. Barrow was panting heavily. It wasn't because he was tired. But after a short venting, more rationality came back, allowing him to barely control his emotions. This confrontation made Barrow exhausted. But the voice in the communication crystal was steady and calm. This is normal. At the beginning of the transaction, I told you, the secondary golden potion is not perfect, it has flaws, and that is why. The crown created the golden potion. And you, my friend, you have eliminated most of the drawbacks of this potion through many rituals. The rest? You need to adapt. Barrow, you are already a step climber. You need to change your previous behavior patterns. You no longer need to stay behind the scenes, you need to step to the front. The other party paused here. Then, a smile appeared in his voice. Besides, didn't you find a solution? Just some tables and chairs. Won't calm you down. What you need is a real fight, a fight with your enemies. When the battle is over, and you win, you will find that you have returned to your original appearance. Barrow's breathing became rapid again. He needed to return to his original appearance. He had enough of the current rage. Got it. Barrow said so. Barrow did not question the other party's words. With the contract, the other party could not lie to him. Of course, there are still necessary inquiries. Are you sure? When asking this question, even though Barrow was filled with anger in his heart, he still felt a little uneasy. After all, that was his lifelong knot. Yes. If it was just one-on-one, I would face your brother. The chance of winning is only 30%. But if that tigress and your brother go to war, and I wait for the opportunity, the chance of winning is 90%. The words in the communication crystal were full of confidence. This made Barrow breathe a sigh of relief. Why did he dare to make such a big fuss in the inner bay? In addition to the fact that the accumulated power was sufficient, it was because of the cooperation with the other party. A Herc secondary gold potion allowed him to ignore all his shortcomings and step onto the steps to godhood. A promise, let his brother never return to Niwen. Okay. I look forward to your good news. Now, I need to adjust. After dawn, I will talk to my nephew, Barrow said, and took the initiative to end the call. Now Barrow, all his mind is full of Pesteri Hamlet in the St. Joan of Arc Girls' College. This guy is as tolerant as him. If he hadn't launched this coup, I'm afraid that the future will be beaster. Hamlet has launched, and he will use more cruel means. The head of Gyudon is the best explanation. Even if he was controlled by anger, Barrow also remembered that he never attacked Gyudon Hamlet. After all, the other party was his brother's second son, and he had to keep him. This would be his trump card in case of an emergency. Just like Beaster. According to Barrow's idea, Beaster must be held in his hands, but when this thought came up, another thought came up. Why should I let Bistri live? Am I still afraid of my brother? I am afraid of him. So I let his son become my bargaining chip. No. I am not afraid of him. I am not afraid. Die. Bistri must die. Barrow roared in his heart. There is no doubt that the emotion of fear brought back the previous unwillingness, and the anger of being swayed completely took the upper hand. Reason was disappearing quickly. However, just as he was about to rush out of the dilapidated study, Barrow stopped his steps abruptly. This can't be done. I need to wait. That tigress has challenged that bastard. 2 days. 2 more days. I just need to wait. The words in his heart could not be controlled and came out, making Barrow start talking to himself. He walked around his ruined study like a madman. Dirt, who was standing in the corner, began to walk further away. Throughout the whole process, this man who had just been promoted to the first spy under Barrow held his breath and tried not to make any noise. Like a fleeting shadow, Barrow continued to talk to himself. I should go now. No. It's not safe now. Right. Safe is the best choice. And safe will make me win. Damn it. Am I still afraid of that bastard? No. One after another, as if he was asking and answering himself. Barrow's face began to twist. Dirk was sure that Barrow was crazy. Mad men are not scary. What is scary is that crazy men are very powerful. Hee hee. Suddenly, Barrow laughed strangely. Dirk stopped immediately and made himself merge into the shadow. Dirk was lucky. Barrow did not find him. But the guy who was found was unlucky. A spy who came to report was caught by Barrow, and his limbs were broken just like that. Listening to the other parties wailing and screaming, Barrow laughed heartily. Yes, that's it. Great. As he said that, Barrow pounced on the spy and began to bite him. After 3 or 4 seconds, the spy became a bloody mess. Barrow became more and more excited. The twisted excitement made Barrow start to move his body there. Duarte looked at Barrow at this moment, his scalp tingling and his whole body cold. Without hesitation, Duarte ran out of Barrow's mansion and ran to a secret place. Before, in order to leave a way out for himself, he had already had preliminary friendly negotiations with Mr. Hayes. This time, it will definitely be more pleasant, because he has a bigger bargaining chip. He knows who the person who spoke in the communication crystal is. Chapter 930 Air Yin. Kilgore number 66. 6th floor. Downtown. Hayes sat on a solid wood stool and began to doubt his life. When did my luck get so good? How come I worked so hard to plan for a long time, and then I can't use it at all? But it turned out the same? Why? Hayes asked himself. Puff. Manta, who was disguised at the side, laughed out loud. She had never seen Hayes like this before. Really? Cute. I'm sorry, Manta knew that it was impolite to describe a man as cute, but at this time Hayes was confused, incredible but with a little bit of joy of success, really cute. If it weren't for Miss Cyberlin beside her, she would definitely hug Hayes and kiss him. And Otto von Cyberlin sighed helplessly. As Jimmit's fiancée, and volunteered to participate in this operation without Jimmitt knowing, she left her hiding place and took the initiative to find Hayes. Why? Of course, to prove her worth. Jim loved her. She knew it. But because of this, she wanted to make herself worthy of Jim's love. Although in the book she had read, love was selfless. But love is not just about taking. Selflessness comes from the efforts of both parties. If it is just about taking, then such love has long been distorted into a slave contract. At that time, and thought of a scene she had seen a long time ago. A man married for so-called love took out the savings of his entire family, 3 generations, to build a nest for love, show off for love, and host a banquet for love. Then, after accepting everything, the woman left the man because she found it unsuitable and went to pursue true love. In the end, the man was crying and shouting. What was he shouting for? It's been so long, Annie can't remember clearly. Maybe it was Yen Zi. I really can't remember. But Anne remembers her disdain at that time. In Anne's view, that was not love. It was just a dog barking after a failed transaction. Such a transaction is bound to fail, because it was not a fair transaction from the beginning. But it was mixed with cunning. Manta heard the sigh of the West Berlin lady, and she felt a deep envy in her heart. As the original intelligence chief, she knew some details of the West Berlin family. Similarly, she knew even more clearly that Miss West Berlin must have a trump card to turn the situation around. Unlike her, she had too little talent. Annie, where are you and Jim going to hold your wedding? Manta asked, without showing a single emotion on her face. As the head of intelligence, Manta already knew how to control her emotions. And she would show a little at the right time. Just like this moment, the moment the words fell, Manta's face showed a trace of yearning, which made it open up naturally. Should we go to South Los? What about you? Annie replied, and Manta needed the latter sentence. The intelligence chief looked at Hayes. Hayes, who had come to his senses, immediately fell into self-doubt again. It's not that he didn't want to make a promise. It's too early to make a promise. He's not sure whether he can really succeed in the end. Facing Manta, his closest partner, he did not want to use marriage to bind her, because he knew that he could not bind her. Manta's intelligence was enough to make her wake up quickly after a short period of loss. Therefore, he needed to stand high enough to win Manta's love. Why not change another one? Of course, it was because other women were the same. But they were definitely not as smart as Manta. Hayes knew what he wanted. Seeing Hayes's appearance, Manta couldn't help but kick the young noble. Then, When she was about to say something, the sound of footsteps came out without disguise. The soles of the feet stepped on the ground slightly. This was the obvious knock on the door. Hayes opened the door one step ahead. He already knew who was coming. Looking at it standing outside the door. The spy under Barrow. Hayes smiled widely. Warm and gentle. Good evening, my friend. Hayes went forward and gave the other party a big hug. Hayes was really enthusiastic about this hidden player who made him doubt himself. After all, Hayes knew how much convenience the other party could bring to him, and what huge benefits there were in these conveniences. So, Hayes would not refuse the other party. He was not like some people who like to increase their strength for no reason. He didn't have that kind of hobby. Even though he was a little uncomfortable, he still preferred the present. Good evening. Duarte responded, and after looking at Manta and in the room, he tilted his head slightly, and indicated with the corner of his mouth. Go out to talk? Sure. Hayes nodded. Then, the young nobleman said hello to Manta and Anne, and followed Duarte directly to the alley on the side. Looking at Duarte's back tense by nervousness, Hayes's mouth curled up again. He knew that the other party had brought good news again. In fact, when the other party contacted him last time, Hayes knew that there would be a scene towards. But he didn't expect it to happen so soon. Do you have a way to leave the inner bay? In the depths of the alley, Duarte turned around and asked directly. Yes. Hayes gave an affirmative answer. With the St. Joan of Arc Women's College during the day, the entire Kildare port fell into martial law. Especially with Barrow's current state, it makes this martial law more uncertain, and those channels that originally belonged to Barrow have become extremely dangerous. People are no longer reliable in order to protect themselves or seek greater benefits. Most of the channels controlled by Durut are in this situation. And the channels he opened up by himself? One is not complete and cannot be used. Although the other one is complete, the person in charge of this channel was killed. Not just one person. All of them were killed. They died in their base. As Durut recalled the previous scene, he became more and more nervous. As Barrow's hidden man, Durut, who knew more about the situation, knew that Kildare Harbor would be in chaos now, but he didn't expect it to be so chaotic. You know, the channel he opened up was considered medium level among the underground forces in Kildare Harbor. Under normal circumstances, no one would provoke them. But now, they were all wiped out. Obviously, Kildare Harbor was completely out of control. Someone more terrifying had come here. This made it even more eager to leave. Almost immediately, the stalker lowered the transaction requirements. Originally, he planned to let his family leave first, and then use the information he knew to exchange for more wealth and secret medicine. The wealth was prepared for his family, and money was needed to make it work anywhere. As for the secret medicine, it was prepared for his child. He hoped his child would be stronger than him. Don't do anything behind the scenes. Really, I didn't know how I died. The emotion in his heart did not make Durut slow down his speech. 5 people. 2 old people, 2 children, and an adult. If possible, let them leave Kildare Harbor now. If you can do it, I will tell you a news worth 1,000 gold. Durut said so. Hayes narrowed his eyes. This combination of 5 people made him think of family at the first time. A complete 3-generation family. Is it this guy's family? Hayes guessed, and became more and more curious. And the anxious Duarte did not notice Hayes's calm scrutiny. At this moment, the hidden man only wanted his parents, children and wife to leave. If he left alone, he was still sure to leave. Although he lacks talent, he is better than ordinary people. Okay. Where to? Hayes did not bargain. The young noble knew that when a man began to worry about the safety of his family, the chips he put out would be absolutely objective. Fort Sidian. It reported a place name that surprised Hayes. As we all know, most people who set out from the inner bay usually go to South Los. Not only does South Los have a more pleasant climate, rich in resources, and because of the convenient transportation in South Los, it is different from the restricted inland sea. It is just the coastal waters, which is enough to give the pursuers a headache. The danger of South Los is far beyond imagination. Hayes made a judgment in his heart instantly. With the declaration of war by the Countess on the Old Lion, everyone knew that the Old Lion had sneaked into South Los at some point. But no one thought it was dangerous. The declaration of war by the Countess, it gave most people a great illusion. Everyone thought that the Countess had a sure win, and that everything was just a formulaic performance. After that, everything was the same as before. But its performance made Hayes alert. Hayes still smiled. No problem. Facing such a promise. It added. Sign a contract. Of course. Hayes immediately took out a contract and began to write. Duarte on the side was watching seriously. In the shadow above the two people's heads, a crow was also watching with its head tilted. Is it okay? According to Duarte's suggestion. Hayes, who had revised it twice, handed the final contract to the other party. After checking it again, Duarte signed his name. When Hayes also signed his name, the whole contract glowed with a faint light. The contract was established. Hayes and Duarte breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. The two looked at each other. Hayes stretched out his right hand. Duarte immediately grasped this right hand. The two shook hands vigorously, and then they moved closer. Duarte whispered in Hayes' ear. Barrow colluded with the Duke of North County and prepared to assassinate the old lion. Boom! This sentence fell into Hayes' ears, like a muffled thunder. Even with Hayes' cunning, his face changed repeatedly at this time. With the contract, he did not doubt the authenticity of the news. He began to think about the key to this matter. Not only the interests, but also life and death. After all, the Grand Duke of North County is not known for his kindness. His greatest reputation is warlike. Okay, I understand. You bring your family here. I will arrange for them to go to Fort Citian. Hayes thought in his heart, but he was not slow in his words. See you later. Dick turned and left. Similarly, Hayes did not stay long. He needs to contact his two friends. This is too unexpected. If he is not careful, it will not be a riot in Newen, but a war that will sweep across the entire South County. Hayes is not opposed to war. But the premise is that the war develops under the premise of being beneficial to them. And what is happening now? It is not. Of course, the young nobleman would rather contact Arthur, the person he has decided to follow, but in order to get close to Barrow, he took the initiative to give up the means to contact Arthur. Otherwise, if Barrow found out, he would be seeking death. But who could have thought that before he really approached? In the end, he gave him such a big surprise. Fate. Fate. You just like to play tricks on people. Hayes walked faster and faster with a sigh in his heart. After the two left, the crow flew silently into the night sky. Black and black blend together perfectly, indistinguishable from each other. Just like Acker and Ever at this moment. Under the cover of night, the two top assassins seemed to show between the residences of the 7 major families in the Inner Bay. After the riots during the day, the 7 major families had already opened their defenses and set more guards to patrol. Such force is enough to deter most people with bad intentions. But it definitely does not include Acker and Ever. With Arthur's order, the two top assassins began to harvest the lives of the patriarchs of the 7 families. For assassins walking in the shadows, this is not difficult. Or rather, this is what they are good at. Assassins in the shadows can defeat the strong with the weak. Not to mention, they are the strong side, without being discovered by anyone. Acker and Ever completed the task ordered by Arthur excellently. The two hid in the backyard of a house in Kilgore Harbor, and talked in secret language. Ever, the 7 families are weaker than imagined. Acker, yeah. Ever, they were drained of blood by the Golden Lion family. Not only do they have no foundation, but they also have no talent. So, it is normal to be weak. Acker, yeah. Ever, the Golden Lion family is the giant. Acker, yeah. Ever, in addition to yeah, can you give some other reactions? You are not in my bed. Acker, yeah. With Acker's return, Ever wisely ended the conversation. He knew that assassins should keep silent. But he couldn't help it. Since becoming the owner of the mobile stall, Ever always likes to talk more with people. Like the silence now, he is restraining himself. After all, the mission is over. They completed the mission brilliantly. What's wrong with chatting? If he hadn't restrained himself, he would have made a midnight snack for himself right now, and it must be more stimulating. Only then can his current mood be reflected. Of course, if his wife does it for him, it would be perfect. When he thought of his wife, Ever was in a trance. Acker looked at his friend opposite him, and there was helplessness in his eyes. Sure enough, like me, neither is a qualified assassin. I don't know what Alvin and Alma are doing, Acker thought, but his eyes immediately condensed. Ever also tensed up all over in an instant. The next moment, a black crow appeared on the roof. It brought a unique ominous word. Can you walk your dog? Chapter 931 Invitation. Hayes returned to number 66, 6th floor. Downtown secretly and quickly. His solemn expression caught the attention of Manta and Anne. What happened? Manta asked directly. Something unexpected happened. Hayes did not pretend to be relaxed. He told the news he had just received in detail. In the eyes of this young noble, it is a virtue to bear it alone, but working together is the best way to solve the problem. He did not think he could handle everything. War. That is a world war that is very likely to happen. Hayes' story made the two ladies look serious. They watched Hayes take out the communication crystal from the secret compartment. This communication crystal can contact Jim and Carol. After the communication crystal flashed several times. Jim, Carol. I have something to tell you, Hayes said seriously and solemnly. But just as Hayes was about to continue, Carol laughed out loud. You lost? This was Carol's voice. Well, I lost. I didn't expect him to be so impatient. Jim's helpless voice sounded. Such a conversation made Hayes stunned. The young noble blinked, and his brain began to spin rapidly. Hayes, who was not stupid, instantly guessed a possibility. Suddenly, the young noble's breathing became rapid, because this possibility was really incredible. Ha ha ha, I won this time. Facing the silent Hayes, Gimp laughed out loud. Wouldn't you ask more questions? You are so surprised. This time it was Carol's turn to be helpless. Draw, Gimp announced. Carol shrugged and accepted the result. And Hayes began to ask more questions. You know about that? Did the adults tell you? Of course. Besides the adults, no one can predict the future. Just now, the adults have told us about the incident and have made proper arrangements. Don't worry. The war will only be limited to a small area, Jim replied. It is true. Hayes said this, but he felt a little disappointed in his heart. He felt powerless. Just like before. He had already thought about what to do. But why did he still have no power to use when the time came? But immediately, Hayes adjusted his mood. He was glad that he could follow such an adult. A powerful, gentle and prophetic adult must be the goal he would follow in his life. Without any hesitation, Hayes said directly, It is my honor to follow you. So are we. Jim and Carol responded at the same time. Then, the short conversation ended. Huh? Hayes did not hide himself and let out a long breath in front of Manta. Then, he took Manta's hand and said with a smile, I have two extremely lucky things in my life. The first is to meet you, and the second is to decide to follow you. Manta did not ask. Which one is more fortunate? This lady, who was a former intelligence chief, just snuggled in Hayes' arms. She thought they were going to encounter misfortune. In war, anything can happen. Unfortunately, at that time, it is the norm. The disaster caused by countless misfortunes breathes the roar of ambitious people in blood and corpses. Manta doesn't like war. Normal people don't like war. Hayes is the same. The two hugged each other as if no one was around, and talked in a low voice with their heads down, and looked at the two of them, and walked aside tactfully. She missed Jim very much now. She also thought something unfortunate was going to happen just now. At that moment, her heart was full of panic. It was also at that moment that she felt that her previous plan was reckless. What she thought was a normal separation could have almost become a farewell forever. The thought of such a result made the West Berlin lady feel suffocated. Fortunately, the worst result did not happen. She still had a chance. She missed Jim. Achoo! Jim sneezed loudly, and Carol on the opposite side dodged urgently. Especially the bread and sausage in his hands were protected in his arms. Carol didn't want to go without dinner. After a busy day and half a night, this was Carol's first meal. Carol cherished it very much. These foods were donated by teachers and parents of the St. Joan of Arc Girls' College. Especially the latter, who were even more generous at this time. These middle-class people were not fools. After discovering something was wrong with Kilder Harbor, they knew very well where was safe. Therefore, the dinner of the St. Joan of Arc Girls' College was extremely sumptuous. There were not only bread and sausages, but also beer, sweet lettuce soup, and seasonings such as salt, black pepper, butter and honey. However, Jimmet and Carol refused the beer sent by those enthusiastic parents, as they knew that alcohol would make them dull. After all, the adults gave them a new task, to contact the leader of the Invisible Ones. Jimmet and Carol were confident about any task. But when it came to the adults' families, the two of them had more concerns. Maybe he has caught a cold. I'll leave Carol's mission to you. I think I need to rest, Jim said, as he was about to lie down on the blanket. This is the utility room of the St. Joan of Arc College for women. There are no real beds. As for the students with better conditions, the teacher's dormitory? That's where the wounded live. Even the classrooms were full of people with limited mobility. The riots that broke out during the day, even if Arthur's side intentionally controlled the direction of the attack, but there were still many students and parents injured. Of course, except for the dean, there was no real death. But this also meant that Jimt and Carol could not fight with the wounded for beds. Pa! The sheathed long sword hit the blanket. At the moment the long sword hit, Jimt dodged. The action was clever and agile. Carol looked at Jimt and said slowly, "It seems that you have recovered. Let's go! Don't liven up the atmosphere, you know we need to face it together. And it's just a message." Jimt rolled his eyes immediately. "Do you believe such words? Can't you hear the hesitation in the voice of the Lord?" "I can't hear it," Carl said seriously. But the next moment, the young swordsman added, "I only heard that the Lord was having a midnight snack. And he was having a very happy meal. That kind of pleasure, I heard it for the first time." In response, Jimt did not refute. Just now, he heard the swallowing sound of Arthur when he delivered the message, which was not refuted at all, and that kind of happiness made Jimt guess involuntarily. "What is the Lord eating?" "I don't know. But it must be something very delicious." Callel shook his head, while stuffing the sausage into his mouth. The young swordsman swallowed with big mouthfuls. The young swordsman wanted to find the feeling of having supper with his master. But there was always something missing. However, even if there was something missing, the sausage in his mouth became delicious. This is a kind of infection. The infection comes from the master. Jimt looked at Carol's pure appearance, and couldn't help sighing in his heart. Carol and him, and Hayes are different. Carol is pure enough. And he and Hayes? Too many thoughts. Especially after deciding to follow Arthur, Carol became more and more pure, seemingly throwing away his brain, leaving only the sword in his hand, and the orders of the adults. And he and Hayes? Naturally obey the orders of the adults. Then, collect the situation at any time, make one plan after another. These plans are not used most of the time. But they need to make sure that once something goes wrong, there is a corresponding solution plan. This is the awareness of him, and Hayes as followers. Of course, the two of them tacitly took charge of their own areas, and complimented each other from time to time. "Let's go! Let's go meet Miss Anna," Jimt said and stood up. Carol followed behind. The two met Anna near the corridor of the college lobby. Next to this lady stood the old lion's young son, Pestry Hamlet. In addition to the old lion's young son, there were also several student representatives. Miss Anna, who was a security guard of the college, had a natural advantage in facing the college students, especially during the day. This lady saved 15 students. The 15 students who were originally doomed to die from the stray arrows, the most serious of which were only scratched. This greatly improved Anna's reputation among the students. Therefore, the armed forces belonging to the students in the academy are now under the control of this lady. No one is dissatisfied. "Good evening, Jimt, Carol." When Anna assigned the night watchman and patrolman to the student representatives, the young old lion came over and greeted Jimt and Carol. The young old lion may not be as active as the eldest son on the stage of the inner bay, but he would participate in some necessary dances, killings and pre-ceremonies. So, the three of them naturally knew each other. "Good evening, Bistry." Jimt and Carol responded politely. This politeness was mixed with a strong sense of indifference and alienation. The young old lion immediately smiled bitterly. Of course he knew why this happened. His identity. The identity of the young son of the old lion. After his two elder brothers died, he was the first heir to Niwen. And this identity made the two comrades in arms, who were supposed to be in the same camp, wary. For this, Bistry expressed understanding. Moreover, there was no explanation. He knew that any explanation would be pale and powerless. He would use practical actions to tell everyone that, compared to the first heir to Niwen, he hoped to do something more valuable and meaningful. For example, to make the lives of the common people better. As for the specifics, build a semi-public school in the dock area. Collect a small amount of money, and let the common people have the opportunity to learn to read. He came to Anna for this. As we all know, after leaving aside the tutors of the nobles, the teaching staff of the St. Joan of Arc Women's College is one of the best in Niwen. He hopes to borrow a few teachers. Of course, he would give the highest salary. The dock area was a gathering place for common people, and few respectable people would go back, let alone teach these people. However, Bistry believed that money would impress them, and this was the first step. When enough people on the dock were literate, he would start the second step of teaching skills. It could be carpentry, blacksmithing, and of course, cooking. Common people had to pay a very high price to learn these skills for survival. If possible, he hopes to reduce the cost. If he wants to teach these skills publicly, which are only in the hands of a few people, it will be extremely difficult. First of all, he has to face those angry carpenters, blacksmiths, chefs, etc., not to mention finding teachers among them. Therefore, before the first step is completed, he will never reveal the second step to the outside world. When knowledge becomes fair, society will become fair. Bistri secretly clenched his fist. This is his dream, and also the goal he has been fighting for all his life. After signaling to Jimt, Carol, the old lion cub walked towards his room. If he wants to fulfill his dream, he needs to overcome the difficulties in front of him. Although he believes in Arthur, Bistri will not be unprepared. After all, what if? This guy seems to have become different. Carol's intuition as a swordsman made him feel that there was a kind of brilliance in Bistri, who he was facing. It seemed so. Jimmit glanced at the back of the old lion's cub, and he was non-committal. For Jimmit, he preferred to see a dead Bistri. Even if there was a contract, it would still be the same. If Bistri lived, it would be an obstacle for the adults to unify the inner bay. Should we create an accident? No. It's too obvious at this time. We need to be patient for a while. Jimmit thought in his heart. At this time, Anna finally arranged the task for these newbies. Anna was not impatient at all. Not only patient, but also serious. Because, a sense of satisfaction. It had been a long time since anyone could listen to her story so patiently. Especially the respectful look, which gave Anna an unprecedented sense of accomplishment. It was much better than being with those 4 assholes. Those 4 assholes only looked down on her. She was obviously the boss. Of course, compared with Melinda. I was about to say that Melinda was more important. But when she thought of the respectful and yearning eyes of those girls, Anna hesitated. Why did I hesitate? Could it be? No way. No way. The lady quickly shook her head and threw away the unreliable idea. Jimmit and Carol looked at each other calmly. This woman seems abnormal. Evaluating in his heart, Jimmit stood up and issued an invitation on behalf of the adults he followed. Ms. Anna, I am here on behalf of my family. I want to invite Ms. Cassandra to a family gathering. The time is tomorrow at noon. Chapter 932 Arrangement. Anna heard Arthur's name again. Although he only referred to her as Sir, she still felt uncomfortable, but soon, Anna suppressed this discomfort. It was not because of Anna's generosity. It was because of Gimt, Carol's scrutiny. It was calm, but deep in the bone marrow. Just a slight contact, it gave people goosebumps. Anna smiled immediately. Okay. I will convey it immediately. Although Anna still does not have the contact information of her organization's boss. Based on her observations during this period, Anna believes that her boss knows what happened here, and will contact her soon. As for whether to meet or not, she has no say. Is this the bloodline of the medium? Anna sighed. Then, she felt more and more uncomfortable. When she thought of the rumored medium bloodline's ability to predict the future, the lady felt very wronged. The kind of wrong feeling that comes from being bullied, and not even daring to retaliate. It was really too uncomfortable. Unable to help it, the lady pursed her lips. Although the next moment, the lady restrained her expression, but Jimt and Carol still saw it. The former smiled, like a fox. The latter was cold, like a lone wolf. Anna felt very uncomfortable. She now began to miss her 4 abnormal friends. Missing is like a tide. It is surging and continuous. So Anna said goodbye. Take care. If you have any news, please tell us immediately. You know you can find us there, Jim said with a smile. Anna nodded, and walked away faster and faster. In the seemingly ordinary words of the young noble, she heard a hint of threat. As for why, it goes without saying. Jim, after watching the lady disappear around the corner of the corridor, Jim's smile faded, and a hint of coldness appeared in his eyes. He saw Anna's dissatisfaction with his master just now. Regarding his master. No! To be precise, the relationship between his mistress and this lady. As a follower, Jimmit certainly knew about it. Originally, he was just paying attention. But the dissatisfaction of this lady made Jimmit subconsciously want to create some accidents, and really wipe out this lady. For Jimmit, the unstable factors around him need to be eliminated. However, since it concerns his master and mistress, he must be careful. Especially since his mistress seems to be pregnant. At this time, he must not be careless. At least, he must get his master's tacit consent. After dawn, there will be more fighting. Right? Carol was more direct. The riot started. The surroundings were in chaos. At that time, it was too easy to kill someone. I will ask the adults for instructions, Jim said, looking at Carol. Asking. Facing such an inquiry. Carol nodded. Then, the two returned to the utility room and reported to Arthur what happened truthfully, and proposed the idea of erasing Anna without leaving any trace. Arthur praised him, but did not give a positive answer. Believe in Melinda. She will make the corresponding arrangements, Arthur said. He put a watermelon-sized piece of pure gold in his mouth. The rich taste instantly filled his breath, just like melted chocolate, making Arthur squint his eyes in comfort. This was a pure enjoyment. Arthur was extremely fascinated. However, Arthur did not forget the main business, level 17. The food storage was full. 30,000/30,000. Looking at this number, Arthur's sense of security increased greatly. Of course, this was not the end. Level 17. The food is purely for immediate combat, while his bloodline is for increasing his combat limit. In fact, his bloodline desire for food has never stopped. From the beginning, every time he swallowed gold, his bloodline would boil. The feeling of hunger made Arthur almost unable to hold back. Looking at the value of 0/3000, Arthur's mouth curled up. Looking at that only 1 dime of pure gold was consumed, Arthur's mouth curled up even more. If he didn't have enough gold, he wouldn't do this. He would definitely choose to increase his own strength limit first. But if he had enough gold, then he would be a little extravagant. It's like when eating a box lunch. He always likes to save his favorite braised pork for the last minute. And the satisfaction of swallowing it together with the rice. I've been hungry for so long. Finally, I can eat as much as I want. Come on, my stomach. Let me see where your limit is. The voice in my heart, as if making a vow. The next moment, eating began to be more exaggerated than before. Gold nuggets, one by one, entered Arthur's mouth. The promotion value in Snake of Death, Snake Body, began to increase rapidly. While Arthur was paying attention to the increase, he contacted Melinda with the communication crystal. How is it? Melinda's voice was full of concern and nervousness. It's much better than you think. If it wasn't a taboo, I would have opened the champagne now. Arthur was joking. Melinda was relieved immediately. Even though she had absolute confidence in Arthur, she was still a little nervous. It was not until this moment, when she got Arthur's reply, that Melinda was truly relieved. And then, Melinda found something wrong. Based on her understanding of Arthur, if there was no accident, it would be impossible for him to contact her at this time. That's why she was so nervous just now. His brain was spinning rapidly, thinking about everything that happened in Kilgore Harbor. Soon, Melinda guessed something. I'll have a good talk with Anna, Melinda said. Why did Arthur like Melinda? In addition to Melinda's generosity, she was also smart. Do you need me to go with you? Facing such a smart Melinda, Arthur certainly would not hide his true thoughts. Well, it's good to go together. Melinda gave a positive answer. Then when I meet someone, do I need to pay attention to anything? You know, I don't care much about clothes, and I don't know much. And my attitude, I am always wary of strangers. Arthur's voice was full of coquettishness. Emotions need to be improved. And to make Melinda feel his attachment to Melinda, this is the best way after Arthur's observation. Melinda likes it very much, and even enjoys the feeling of being attached to by acquaintances. Cold face but warm heart? Not really. It should be the teaching of his mother in some way. Even if Melinda herself didn't realize it. Arthur found it, but Arthur would not point it out. He is not a very smart person. He still has to rely on this to make his future life better. In short, he must not be like his friend, that fat guy, who is always out. His pockets are cleaner than his face, and if he wants to eat a skewers, he has to wait for his friends to treat him. Right? That is really too embarrassing. Just dress normally. Nothing else matters. I'll take care of everything. Melinda's voice began to rise. It was obvious that the lady felt happy, and the most direct manifestation was that she talked more. Arthur actively cooperated, saying yeah, yes, right, that's it from time to time. It was definitely not perfunctory. After all, he was doing 4 things at once. Chatting with Melinda, eating midnight snack at the same time, while watching his assassins, Acker and Ever, walking the dog. The already irritated and angry Lord Barrow became even more angry. Lord Barrow, who relied on the potion to climb the stairs, was probably the weakest in climbing the stairs. It seemed that the climbing stairs was successful. But there was a huge hidden danger. No! It can be said that it was a flaw. Physical strength has reached the climbing stairs, but spirituality has not. The strong physique casts a shadow on the spirituality, making it difficult for the opponent to calm down in the true sense. In addition, some ingredients in the potion make the spirituality even more chaotic. As a result, Acker and Ever stand in the south and north. When Lord Barrow rushes towards Acker, Ever only needs to say come here in a mean way, and Lord Barrow will rush towards Ever. When Ever is about to be caught up, Acker will throw another stone. It hit the Lord Barrow precisely. Walking the dog. Perfect walking the dog. This made Arthur, who was watching from the dark, slightly relieved. He began to focus more on his heart, contacting his corpse lich with a contract. According to Arthur's original plan, William in North County would be in a dormant state for a long time, but now that the Duke of North County dared to come to South Los, then he would not be polite. He wanted to give the other party a little shock from the corpse lich. South County has passed the cold winter, although there was still a chill in the spring breeze. The temperature was no longer extremely cold. However, in Beijing, during the day, the heavy snow was still falling. At night, the snow fell even harder. Beijing. The pause button was still pressed. At least, on the surface, that was the case. In the Silent Territory, the head of the pioneering noble was hung on the suspension bridge along with the heads of his chief guard, chief swordsman, chief hunter and butler. In the wind and snow, these 5 heads had already turned into lumps of ice. In the hall owned by this noble, William, the corpse lich who used the alias Sebastian Morin, was praying devoutly. May my lord be free from illness and disaster, and be safe and successful. If there is any disaster, please let it befall me. I am willing to bear it for my lord. The prayer echoed in the hall, and those bandits, who did not know how to be quiet, and even despised the law, and the robber leaders did not dare to breathe. Prayers 3 times a day, morning, noon and evening, need to be absolutely quiet. Although I don't know who the Master Master is, anyone who dares to speak at this time will have their Master's neck broken and turned into a zombie. They don't want this. Of course, there are also some smart guys who want to pray together. Then, they are directly crushed into meat paste by their master. You actually regard your belief in the master as a way to promotion? You are so despicable, you don't deserve to live. In the blood, flesh and bones, they saw with their own eyes that the master grabbed the soul of the guy who had just been crushed into meat paste from the void, and put it into the oil lamp to roast it. After wailing for 100 days, you can be shattered. This is the punishment for the blasphemy of the master. It is also your atonement. With these words, their master began to add lamp oil. Every time they heard such wailing, they were frightened and trembled, especially when their army was approaching. The soul of the Lord of Silence, who pretended to negotiate but was ready to assassinate, was also put in. The miserable screams scared them so much that they always had nightmares. Even if they were the guys who killed without blinking an eye. It was the same. The prayer fell. The prayer of the corpse lich ended. In the hall, the 32 bandits and the bandit leader immediately stood up straight. But the one who stood the straightest was the noble servant who had just joined the corpse lich. He was originally just the gardener of the noble master. Even, he was already imprisoned in the dungeon, because the noble lord wanted to exercise the right of first night on his wife. This right, which has been abolished, is still quietly exercised in some places. Fairness is always on the surface. In secret, it was full of pus and blood. The little gardener begged bitterly, hoping that his master would not do this. But the result was that his master became more and more excited. His crying became the music to cheer him up. But he did not resist. He didn't dare to resist. He comforted himself. As long as he was patient, his wife would come back. But what happened? The master exercised his power. Then came the master's chief guard, the chief swordsman, the chief hunter. Finally, the butler also exercised his power. His newlywed wife died. She was hanged. The butler threw her body in front of him. Not bad, very smooth. It's a pity that she died. The butler did not feel any shame, but looked unsatisfied. The gardener exploded. He rushed towards the other party. Then, he was knocked to the ground by the accompanying guards and thrown into the dungeon. He knew that he was dead. When he resisted, he knew that he was dead. But he did not regret it. At least, after death, he could see his wife in the resting place. His wife would definitely blame him for his inaction. She might even beat him severely. Or kill him. It didn't matter. As long as he could see his wife again. At that moment, the master appeared in front of him. Do you want revenge? Yes. Without the slightest hesitation. Not even the slightest pause. His seemingly calm heart began to burn. Didn't he want revenge? How could it be possible? He just didn't have the ability to take revenge, so he chose a cowardly compromise. Now that he had the ability to take revenge, why didn't he take revenge? He followed the master, opened the city gate, and lowered the drawbridge. And cut off all the heads of those 5 bastards. And that lord gave her his wife's soul. Said, this is a reward? Obviously, he just wanted revenge. Facing such a reward, he was very ashamed. But he accepted it. Because that was his wife. At the same time, he secretly vowed to repay the lord in front of him. And the lord's lord. To have such a great subordinate as the lord's lord must be an even greater person. No, it can't be a human. It must be a god. The gardener thought silently in his heart. William saw the gardener's appearance and nodded secretly. The gardener can be trusted. I now have almost 5,000 people under my command. The entire silent territory has also become your stronghold. The next step. The corpse lich who was thinking about the plan suddenly felt a throbbing in his heart. That was Arthur. His master. The master gave him a new order. Without hesitation, the corpse lich knelt on one knee and shouted, My master, your servant is willing to serve you at any time. Chapter 933 3 Punches to Shatter the Grand Duke's Dream. The spiritual dialogue brought by the contract ended quickly. William was very reluctant to leave. He hoped to hear his master's voice more often. As for the order that the master told him to expand rapidly in the North County, and the previous order to build 1 or 2 strongholds and ocean-going fleets, the master is never wrong. So, it's just that he didn't understand the deeper meaning of the master's previous order. Now, the master is just kindly correcting him. What he needs is gratitude. What he needs is to work hard to complete. I slacked off. I thought I had made some achievements. But what was the result? I actually needed an adult to remind me. Saying this, the corpse lich stood up from the ground and looked at his subordinates in front of him. None of the 32 bandits dared to look the corpse lich in the eye. Therefore, none of the bandit leader noticed the blue-green flames in the corpse lich's eyes. The flames rose from the eyeballs. Then, shot out. The target was exactly these 32 bandits, the bandit leader. Without exception, the 32 bandits, the bandit leader were enveloped by the blue-green flames. Ah! Loud and miserable wails came from the mouths of these bandits, the bandit leader. After 10 minutes, the wails gradually subsided. Then came the 32 undead bandits, the bandit leader. Different from the previous evil thoughts. The bandits who became undead, the bandit leader has great loyalty. And this is what William needs. The original plan, he wanted to use time to persuade these bandits little by little, the bandit leader, trying to sort out the internal forces thoroughly, but now time waits for no one. He changed his original plan. He chose to use the most brutal way to achieve his goal. As for the thorough sorting, that will come later. Now, take the gift I gave you, and give it to your loyal subordinates. When the sun sets again, I need to see the undead army that belongs to the adults. We must charge into battle under the adults' watchful eyes. At that time, we will. Supreme glory, William said loudly. Supreme glory. 32 bandits. The bandit leader roared. After becoming undead, they have already become them. And their power has greatly increased. They also possess some unique secrets. And correspondingly, their intelligence began to plummet. Especially when facing William, who created them. They said whatever William said. This was also the way William initially chose to sort out. William wanted to build a thriving territory for his master. Now, William looked at the little gardener on the side. This was the only person in the hall who had not been turned into a dead spirit. He was also the person William valued the most. The other party's talent is worth William's investment. Of course, necessary means are necessary. I need your loyalty. William said so. A trace of special power began to drill out of the heart of the little gardener. It was a seed of power, taking root and sprouting. The picture and language imprinted on it was not a simple contract. In addition to the contract, it was also bound to the soul of the little gardener's wife. The little gardener's own soul was also bound together. William only needs to think about it. And the gardener and his wife will be scared to death. However, the gardener agreed with William. Because he wanted to see his wife. At this moment, facing William's question, the gardener answered without hesitation. Loyalty. It was sonorous and powerful. It was not a disguise. It was not a lie. Immediately, the sprouting seed began to give back power. It made the gardener stronger, and he could also understand the language of the dead. At the first moment, he heard his wife's words. Maury, it hurts. In an instant, the gardener was struck by lightning, and his voice was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. After 4 or 5 seconds, Eva! Eva! The gardener whispered. Unconsciously, the gardener's eyes were red. At this time, William put his hand on the gardener's shoulder. Hatred will make you lose your mind. But, if the blood of your enemies can make you feel better, then after sunset, you will lead the team to charge. The damned nobles of North County are not all dead. William comforted the little gardener in his own unique way. Leave it to me, the little gardener said in a deep voice, and the coldness in his eyes made the temperature of the whole hall begin to drop. Feeling this talent begin to be fulfilled, William laughed. The little gardener will attract all the attention on the surface. And he? Naturally. He will sneak in. No matter how strong the fortress is, it can also be broken from the inside. Loyalty. William shouted again. Loyalty. The gardener responded. But unlike before, the 32 bandits, the robbers also shouted at the same time. Then, they made intensive preparations. And Arthur withdrew his gaze. What William did was better than he thought. He would not interfere. After all, he was not omniscient and omnipotent. Grand Duke of North County? Welcome to South Los. Arthur thought silently in his heart. A trace of murderous intent began to spread. Arthur and the Duke of North County had never met before. Even, before this, there was no intersection, but this did not prevent Arthur from killing him at this moment. Why did he come? For the old lion? Yes and no. To be precise, the other party came for South County. After killing the old lion, the other party would definitely launch a war against the entire South County, and at that time, Nanlos would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. Arthur did not want number 2 Kirk Street to be caught in the flames of war. That was where he planned to retire. He planned to farm there, drink tea and rest, and spend the rest of his life with Melinda. Originally, this goal was almost achieved. However, the Duke of North County intervened, and the established facts suddenly changed. Then, I'm sorry. Since the other party chose to do this, he must bear the consequences of doing so. Arthur planned to plant the other party into the ground. What are you thinking about? Melinda, who was talking to Arthur, she immediately noticed that something was wrong with Arthur. Nothing. I suddenly thought of something that made me unhappy. Arthur didn't say it clearly, but told Melinda everything with gestures. Melinda was shocked. She didn't expect that the Duke of North County also came to South Los. Immediately, the lady's brain began to spin rapidly. Of course, the words on her mouth did not stop. What do you want for breakfast? Sandwich? Or soup? And the gestures were hidden and fast. Melinda, how about we temporarily join forces with the Duke of North County to kill the old lion? Seeing this gesture, Arthur laughed in his heart. Enemies are not fixed, but can be changed at any time. Especially for enemies like the Duke of North County. If you can help before you die, it would be great. As a medium, Arthur is flexible. Arthur does not object to Melinda's proposal, but has his own opinion. Arthur, a too easy alliance will make the other party not cherish it enough. So why not let our cousin hedge her bets? Melinda's eyes lit up. She instantly guessed what Arthur meant. At this time, Arthur replied, Soup. Please. Do you know how to make fried noodles? It means pulling the noodles into long strips or pancakes. The former is 2 entangled strips. The latter is coated with brown sugar. Arthur asked. His gestures did not stop. Arthur, be careful, these 2 people are not ignorant. Melinda, got it. The riot in the Inner Bay was most likely instigated by the old lion. Arthur agreed with what Melinda had guessed. He also thought that it was the old lion's indulgence that made Barrow dare to do this. No. To be precise, it was the old lion who secretly commanded. Therefore, the old lion must have known that Barrow had contacted the Duke of North County. The old lion also knew that the Duke of North County was going to launch a surprise attack. But, what does it matter? To some extent, Arthur hoped that the old lion or the Duke of North County would think that he was the real planner. Only in this way, he could achieve the final victory. I'll try. Melinda said this, and waved goodbye to Arthur. When the call ended, Arthur sped up the speed of the midnight snack. Some guys couldn't wait. He, of course, couldn't let them down. Time passed by. When the east lighted up, when the sun jumped out from the horizon, the whole of Kildare Harbor was still quiet. Yesterday's riot at the St. Joan of Arc Girls' College scared everyone. Maybe these people belonged to different classes. However, they still had the ability to judge the danger. Even if some people were so slow that they had no sense at all, they would still have the ability to judge the danger when they saw the changes in the people around them. Therefore, they closed the doors and windows last night. The woman in the house hid in the cellar with her child. The men in the house stood guard behind the door with weapons. Those who had muskets held them tightly. Those who didn't have muskets held daggers and short swords. If they didn't have any of these, then kitchen knives would be a good choice. However, it was quiet last night. There was no battle as imagined, and no one took advantage of the situation to rob. Especially the latter, which frightened everyone all night. But the sun rose, but nothing happened, but everyone still didn't dare to be careless. Many people heard the noise near the Leo Palace at this time. Some well-informed guys were spreading news one after another in a serious manner. It was hard to tell whether it was true or not, but it was enough to make everyone more cautious. After all, at this time, it is better to be cautious. So, as the sun rose, the entire Kildare port did not wake up. However, this slumber was soon broken. A cavalry team of 100 people appeared on the street. As this cavalry moved forward, everyone who saw it, their hearts were in their throats. But soon, many people found something wrong. Duh. The sound of horse hooves was a bit chaotic, not uniform. The brave ones began to open the windows a little, looking at the street. When they saw the cavalry clearly, they had more doubts in their hearts. This cavalry was not as mighty as imagined. On the contrary, every cavalryman had a look of fear on his face. Some people were sitting on horseback. They were even trembling. They didn't look like a team going to war at all. They looked more like the remnants of a defeated army. But the remnants didn't have such tall horses and shiny armor. People's eyes subconsciously looked at the front of the team. When they saw the gentleman leading the team, they were more confused. Barrow Hamlet, they knew him. His sharp face and bald hair left a fresh memory for everyone who had seen him. What if you hadn't seen him? That doesn't matter. The bards always tell about the appearance of this lord in restaurants and taverns, and bring up some small stories. Naturally, in these stories, this lord is always a stupid villain. But everyone loves to listen to such stories. In order to make their dinner more sumptuous, many bards also prepare portraits of this lord. Therefore, Lord Barrow Hamlet is a household name in Niwan. But the Lord Barrow in the portrait is not as embarrassed as he is now. Angry? People are not prepared to describe Lord Barrow at this time. It is really that this lord looks too weird at this moment. There are bumps all over his bald head, some of which are the size of pigeon eggs, and these bumps are stacked one on top of the other. It is precisely because of this that this lord cannot wear a helmet. However, even if he wears a helmet, he is still attractive. Bruised eye sockets, corners of mouth. It seems that the nose is bleeding. At this moment, it hasn't been wiped clean yet. Was he beaten? Soon, people came to this conclusion. Suddenly, people's expressions became interesting. In Kildare Harbor, who dared to beat this gentleman? Only their lord, the Grand Duke. But the riot yesterday did not happen. Many people speculated that something had happened to the old lion, and more people were very taboo. Besides the prince, who else was there? People speculated. Barrow felt those hidden gazes. The anger that had just been suppressed was about to rise again. However, this Lord Barrow held back. Those two bastards, no matter whose subordinates you are, whose orders you received, just wait. When I become the Lord of the Inner Bay, I will definitely settle this account with you. Even if it is because of you, I wake up. I will also cut you into pieces. Thinking of last night's experience, Lord Barrow clenched his fists. He didn't know how many times he had been pelted with stones by those two bastards. Especially the last person who showed up and punched him 3 times, leaving his eyes black, his mouth swollen, and his nose bleeding. But he was also very grateful. It was because of these last 3 punches that his swollen heart was completely awakened. In an instant, his anger subsided. Now, he could calmly deal with the situation in front of him. He knew his top priority was he wanted to catch Bistri. As long as Bistri was in his hands, he still had a chance. Whether he was facing his brother or that North County bastard. He set out immediately. He came here with his personal guards, looking at the St. Joan of Arc College in the distance. Barrow Hamlet, who was sitting on his horse, shouted loudly, "Bistri, come out. You don't want innocent people to lose their lives because of you. Do you?" The voice was heard far away in the St. Joan of Arc Women's College. The next moment, footsteps were heard. Tap, tap, tap. The clear footsteps immediately attracted Barrow's attention. He looked towards the entrance of the college. When he saw the person coming out of the college clearly, the gentleman exclaimed directly, "It's you?" Chapter 934 Bloodline 4th Level. The man in front of Hamlet Barrow is so familiar. Although his face is still covered by a cloak, Barrow will never forget that cloak and the way he walks. It was the other party who suddenly appeared and punched him 3 times when the 2 men were leaving. These 3 punches hurt. It was the kind of pain that came from the bottom of my heart. It was a strong sense of humiliation. It was the reason why Barrow remembered the man in front of him so vividly. And now? Great. It's really great. He can wash away his shame. Mr. Barrow, who was hit by 3 punches, did not think that he was inferior to the other party, but because he was in the wrong state at that time. Not only was he blinded by anger, but he was also confused by those 2 bastards. Otherwise, how could the person in front of him succeed? Thinking in his heart, Mr. Barrow was ready to take action. But just as Mr. Barrow was about to take action in the St. Joan of Arc Women's College, Pestle Hamlet came out. The young man was still wearing yesterday's clothes. They were stained with blood and dirt. However, the young man's expression became more and more determined. He looked at Barrow. His eyes were full of pleading. "Uncle Barrow, please don't make the same mistake again. If you want, I will ask my father for mercy. You can live." There was a slight tremor in Pestle's voice. Anyone could hear the pleading emotion in it. This is a young man who values family affection. Many people thought subconsciously. But many people also found something wrong. But before these people figured it out, they were attracted by Barrow's laughter. "Asshole. You want to forgive me? Why? Who do you think you are?" Barrow's face was gloomy, and his voice was like a roar. "I am your nephew. It's not me who forgives you. It's my father. Enough. No one can forgive me. I am not wrong. It is your father who is wrong. It is my brother." Barrow's voice rose, but he did not attack Bistri. He knew the role of his nephew very well. What he wanted was a living Bistri, not a dead old lion cub. Therefore, naturally, Barrow looked at the people around Bistri. "You are relying on him, and you are talking nonsense here. Right? Maybe he told you something, making you think you have a sure win. Now, I will let you know what the difference in strength is." Barrow couldn't kill Bistri. But when facing the people around Bistri, this Lord Barrow had no scruples at all. In fact, in a sense, this Lord Barrow hoped to use the death of this person in front of him to intimidate Bistri, so as to achieve his own goal. So, this Lord Barrow disappeared from the horse in a flash. When he appeared again, already reached the target's head. Woo! Whoosh! A punch was thrown. From top to bottom. The sound of breaking through the air was dull and sharp, just like a fighter plane falling from the sky. People who were watching nearby covered their ears, with fear in their eyes, and retreated one after another. Even Bistri, who was deliberately avoided by Barrow, was struck by lightning at this time, and staggered to the ground, and almost fell to the ground. The power of climbing the stairs is extraordinary. "Quickly!" The fallen Bistri shouted loudly. He knew that the Lord should be fine, but facing such a blow, he still shouted instinctively. But the next moment, the old lion cub opened his eyes wide. Not only the old lion cub, but also the people around. And Barrow himself. This punch was not dodged. This punch hit the target accurately. However, it was blocked by a thin layer of defensive force field. A punch that was enough to break the city gate. It landed on the thin layer of defense force field, but did not cause a single ripple. And even the sound of breaking through the air stopped abruptly. All that was left was a faint voice under the hood. "Push harder." The voice was not loud, but it was full of unspeakable sarcasm. "Ah!" Barrow roared again, and threw another punch. This punch did not rely on the downward momentum. However, when the dull sound and the sharp sound mixed together, a faint golden luster appeared on the tip of the fist. Then rush. Like a spear thrust out. Defensive force field. Ha! Barrow's sneer of contempt carried unparalleled confidence. He should have such confidence. Because this is the secret of the Golden Lion family, the Spear of the Lion. It is a secret technique specifically designed to break armor. At the beginning, it only targets leather armor. After advancing, it can pierce iron armor. After mastering it, it can easily pierce through invisible force fields. And facing the many secret techniques of the Golden Lion family, Barrow only glanced through it. Or only practiced it to the entry level. But he practiced the unique secret of Lion Spear to the master level. Because Barrow knew the importance of armor breaking. No matter how many secret techniques there are, if they cannot break the defense, they are all useless. Only the secret technique of armor breaking is what he really needs. This shot. Go forward. This shot. It is destined to be earth-shattering. Barrow Chung has tried it secretly more than once. And his shot can easily pierce the defense field of the entry level. Even if it was climbing the stairs, he was sure that he would make the opponent suffer. So, he was full of confidence. So, he was waiting for the cheers of the victor. He was almost impatient. Go to hell! With a low roar, the pale golden light spear hit the invisible defensive force field. Then, pop! The pale golden light shattered. The secret lion spear of the Golden Lion family also shattered. Mr. Barrow's face froze. The ferocious self-confidence became dull. Impossible. This is impossible. Who are you? While questioning, the person opposite slowly took off his hood. A young face attracted everyone's attention. The black hair and eyes were extremely attractive. And many well-informed people guessed the identity of the young man in front of them in an instant. Psychic Arthur Kratos. Barrow certainly recognized Arthur. Although he had never seen him, but the portrait of Arthur, he had seen it more than once. Suddenly, the disbelief disappeared. What followed was a surprise. Lion's spear had no effect on Arthur. Thinking of Arthur's previous strength, Barrow thought it was natural. Perhaps some secret technique offset the lion. But these are not important. The important thing is that Arthur appeared in the inner bay. Appeared in front of him. If Arthur is caught, he will be invincible. As long as he obtains the wealth and secrets of the 1,000-year-old family inheritance. Even if he abandons everything in Niwen, he can find a place to start over. Thinking of this, Barrow directly took out a scroll. The scroll had already turned yellow. Everyone could see the antiquity of this scroll. Be careful. It's a dual scroll. With a family background. Bistri was well informed. The young son of the old lion reminded Arthur. Barrow on the opposite side nodded. That's right. It is a dual scroll. But it is not completely correct. It is only half of the dual scroll. As he said this, Lord Barrow shook the scroll open. At this time, Bistri discovered that this dual scroll was spliced together. About 2/3 of it was a dual scroll. This made people think that this scroll was a dual scroll after it was rolled up. However, after it was unfolded, the remaining part inside showed a difference. Half was written on parchment, and the other half was written on human skin. The former, most people are familiar with it. The latter, most people can't tell. But Arthur recognizes it. Among the many mysterious books he collected, many are human skin books. In the early and late periods of the Empire, many people believed that human skin was the best writing material, which could effectively preserve spirituality. In some ways, this is not a fallacy, so that even now, this production method still exists. Of course, what really concerns Arthur is the content on the human skin. It's like a curse. But it's extremely sacred. Suddenly, Arthur's heart moved. That's right. That's right. It's the God's word of the Holy See. The golden lion cat back then was cursed by the God's word. Kratos, you don't want to face the same situation. Do you? I can give you a decent surrender. Come, kneel before me. Come, pledge allegiance to me. Barrow opened his arms, waiting for Arthur to wag his tail and beg for mercy. Then he saw Arthur, smiling, giving him the middle finger. Of course, the goddess word is terrible. With the strength of the golden lion cat, it was made miserable. Arthur would not be so arrogant as to ignore such a curse. But the goddess word in front of him was not complete. Moreover, Arthur had reason to doubt the power of this goddess word. If he could really have the power of the goddess word as rumored, no, as long as he had half the power of the goddess word as rumored, Barrow would not have waited so long. With the other party's ambition, he would have attacked the old lion long ago. If he didn't, this scroll would not be good enough, and he would not be able to achieve a real decisive victory. Arthur's eyes swept over the joints of the scrolls, and when he saw the words about twist on the parchment, the young psychic smiled. Borrow the residual power of God's words, trigger the deprivation in the dual scroll, and then use twist to transform it into a complete attack on the opponent, but forgive your own power? Yes. I just don't know how long it can last. Arthur commented very pertinently. However, such a comment made Barrow look embarrassed. It's not a good feeling to be seen through by the opponent at a glance when you think you are a killer. Time is enough for you to realize how big a mistake you made. Barrow snorted coldly. The scroll began to emit light. The special power swept across the whole place, wrapping him in Arthur. The next moment, Barrow discovered the secret of Arthur's defensive force field. Are you using physique and force field to defend together? What kind of driving force is this? This kind of power that makes people hungry? Oh, hungry. I want to deprive it. Barrow, who thought he had found Arthur's secret, was full of confidence again. Arthur did not refute. This is the principle of his 17th level. Thick flesh. Armor. There is nothing to refute. As for deprivation, Arthur's spirituality is very stable. There was no movement. Death intuition. There was no flicker at all. And some of Barrow's micro-expressions were telling Arthur that the other party was bluffing, that it was a kind of intimidation, and that the other party wanted to force him to surrender. In response, the young psychic sighed and said slowly, "You will never know my talent and bloodline, so how can you deprive me of it? Don't say that you only have the broken theory of God. Even if the gods of the church come, he cannot deprive me of everything that belongs to me. Because he is not qualified." Arthur did not say anything else, but everyone present understood. The gods are not qualified. Then is Barrow, who holds the god's word, qualified? Definitely not. Feeling the gazes of the people around him, Barrow felt a strong sense of humiliation in his heart, and then came anger, and the suppressed anger appeared again. Immediately, Barrow roared regardless. Deprive him of this power. Buzz! The power on the scroll flashed with dazzling white light. The power of level 17. Thick flesh. Armor. Was not taken away, or even imprisoned, but was suppressed to a certain extent. The part belonging to the force field disappeared. Only the physique part remained. Weaker than expected. No wonder he didn't dare to attack the old lion. Arthur felt his specific situation, and thought silently in his heart. But Barrow didn't know this. Lord Barrow looked at the silent Arthur, and laughed wildly. Do you feel its power? It's my trump card. Die now. Anger once again made Barrow lose his mind. He punched Arthur's chest regardless. He wanted to take out Arthur's heart. He wanted to make Arthur suffer the most painful death. Only Arthur's wailing could satisfy him. His skinny palm instantly touched Arthur's chest. Then, crack! Crack! A series of crisp sounds of bones breaking came. It was not Arthur's bones. It was Barrow's palm. Under the gaze of everyone, Barrow's palm began to twist from the fingers, then the palm, the wrist, the forearm, just like twisting a knot. Impossible. This is impossible. Your force field defense power should be suppressed. Barrow covered his right hand with his left hand, and retreated repeatedly, and let out an unbelievable roar. Arthur nodded. Yes, my force field defense has been suppressed. But, even if it is suppressed, you can't break it. Arthur's words were gentle, but extremely vicious. Just like a snake that kept spitting venom, stimulating Barrow, who was already abnormal. Arthur's words, of course, were not lies. He just didn't tell the whole story. It is true that the force field defense part of level 17, thick flesh, armor, has been weakened. But the physique of level 17, thick flesh, armor, is still there. Of course, this is not the point. The point is Arthur's blood. After last night's Golden Night snack, Arthur's blood death snake is no longer level 1. But it is level 4. Chapter 935 justified. Using gold as a midnight snack luxury, but very nutritious. Arthur smiled at Barrow, who was wailing, while holding his right hand. The comfort brewing in his heart spread all at once, making him feel refreshed. He ate so much. Isn't it for this moment? The young psychic scanned the words death snake 4. Death and the snake are entangled in parallel. Death chases the snake's tail. Snake kiss chases the revelation of death. During the repetition of the cycle, the most unique way of promotion appeared. This uniqueness in your bloodline is enough to attract the attention of most gods and demons. Make those ascenders envious. And even make the dark, gloomy, and dead things afraid. Because they all know the terrifying combination of your talent that is not human and your bloodline at this moment. Even the demigod is unwilling to face your edge. Because he will be devoured by you. You swallowed a huge amount of gold. And after absorbing it thoroughly, your blood began to improve. At this moment, you have gradually grasped the unique meaning of magic. Effect 1. Awakening. 2. Hiding in the shadow. 3. Body. 4. Snake eyes. 5. Snake language. 6. Swallowing recklessly. 7. Snake breath. 8. Snake shadow. 9. Authority. Remnant. Awakening. You have awakened a special bloodline. And now you have become different. The subsequent promotion will make you even more powerful than the human imagination. Physique plus 50, 3 plus 2 plus 5 plus 10 plus 30. Spirit plus 50, 3 plus 2 plus 5 plus 10 plus 30. Hide in the shadow. When you are in the shadow, in the darkness, you will get a stealth plus 12 correction, and you can easily control the shadows and darkness within a radius of 1,000 meters with you, making them form the attack, defense, and auxiliary power of the entry level. Snake body. Your body joints, muscles can not only be flexible like snakes, but also allow the whole body to coil like a snake. At the same time, when facing swords, muskets, explosions, and flames, the defense level is plus 10. When facing acid, poison, the defense level is plus 12. And when facing thunder, the defense level is plus 49. When there is enough food, your body will grow rapidly in a way that breaks the limit, and will be given a physique that matches it. Defense, lifespan, you can freely control the size of your body. Even in winter, you can easily control the sleepiness in your instinct. Of course, if you choose to hibernate, your body will grow faster, and if you refuse to hibernate, the growth rate will remain the same, and your appetite will become better. Food will become an extremely important resource for you now. You need more food to promote the key promotion of your bloodline. 0/10,000. Snake eyes. Look at others with snake eyes. Creatures below level 4 will be instantly shocked. If the other party is in a panic during the intimidation, they will also fall into hallucinations. Creatures in hallucinations will be pulled into the realm of death, and will be directly judged as dead. Creatures at level 4 or above need to make a will judgment, but if the will judgment fails, they will also be shocked, and fall into panic, and after hallucinations, they will also be pulled into the realm of death, judged as instant death. Snake language. You can communicate with snake hiss, command ordinary, secret, entry-level snakes. Even mythical snakes will be intimidated by you. Even when you don't communicate with snake hiss, snake creatures still fear you, and are extremely eager to follow you. Rampant swallowing. Now you don't need to open your mouth, just touch. You can swallow objects with a radius of no more than 1,000 meters, and you can ignore the toxins contained in the food of entry level and below sour, dark energy, etc. Even stones and metals can be digested and absorbed by your stomach, and turned into the purest nutrients to nourish your body. The acid in your stomach can quickly melt demigods. Snake breath. The gas you exhale can turn into a 4th-level poisonous miasma at any time. Your saliva will quickly corrode the earth. When you want, you can turn the entire South County into a poisonous miasma swamp country in one hibernation. When you don't want to, you are a normal person. You can kiss your beloved girl at any time. Snake shadow. The resonance of the breath of death and blood, the qualitative change of ascending to the 4th level. Let your shadow, which has already changed, be completely promoted. It can turn into 666 snake shadows. Silently attack the person you want to attack in your field of vision. When the attacked person dies, it will be transformed into the purest breath of death and taken back. Authority. The promotion of blood allows you to fully grasp the authority of the god of the inner sea that Zididar possesses. At level 4, you have already made your authority truly complete. You can easily control water in a large area. When you stand on the inner sea, you can make the inner sea churn endlessly. You can also use the life in the inner river to heal your injuries. You can also command the creatures in it to work for you. Now you are the god of the inner river. Note 1. The physical strength brought by awakening. The spirituality is absolutely safe. As you eat more food, hibernate, it will grow slowly. Note 2. When hiding, running fast will not affect the hiding level, and when it is exposed to light, when it is completely exposed, it will also have a +6 stealth correction level. Note 3. The snake body can reach 36 meters at this stage, and its current normal lifespan is 2048 years. When it remains in the normal state, the defense level is naturally increased by +6. When you release your own restrictions and reach 36 meters, the defense level is naturally increased by +18, and the defense level against thunder is increased by +81 at the same time. In order to complete the promotion of bloodline in the next stage, you need more gold, mysterious side props, and doom items as food. Note 4. Each defense level is about the explosion level of above the Great Arcana. Note 5. When you complete a deep sleep, You will be full of energy and recover faster. Note 6. The initial attack level of each snake shadow is equivalent to the power of the projectile of Arcana level. The snake shadow can turn and can also track the target every time the snake shadow completes an attack. If it absorbs enough death energy, it can continue to attack and improve its own attack level. The highest is entry level, but it will continue to consume death energy. When the death energy is insufficient, it needs to return to your shadow to replenish the death energy. However, the next time it attacks, it will still attack with the power of the Arcana level projectile. At the same time, after completing an effective attack, it can stop attacking and bring back the death aura for you. When all the snake shadows are out, your shadow will fade, but it will not disappear. Note 7. The Ritual Cat Orange Big 17th level, under the harmony of your talent, does not conflict with your bloodline, but complements each other. Note 8. The power of your control of water on land can reach the level of climbing when standing on the inner sea. You are the god of the inner sea. Your physique and spirituality will receive a 10% bonus, and the secret arts you master will also be strengthened to varying degrees. Level 4 Bloodline. Upgraded 3 levels in a row. The improvement for Arthur is extremely huge. The most intuitive is physique. Spirituality. 30 points. Increased by 30 points respectively. This almost exceeds the total of the past. It doubled Arthur's attributes. Not to mention the defensive level brought by the snake body. To put it simply, with Arthur's exaggerated physique, value and snake body, defense, if he stood here and let Barrow hit him, the only one who would be hurt would be Barrow. And this is just the norm. When Arthur releases the restrictions, Barrow will die at a glance. Arthur doesn't believe that he, who is 36 meters tall, can't scare Barrow. As long as he is scared, a snake eye can kill him. And if we get to the inland river, Arthur can let the other party know what is sacred and inviolable. The skyrocketing strength made Arthur want to shout that he doesn't eat beef. However, it was a bit too shameful. Arthur couldn't say it. So, he chose a very gentle way, showing himself. Come on, use a little more strength. Arthur smiled at Barrow. Barrow retreated again and again. The pain in his right hand made Mr. Barrow's mind sober up again. He stared at Arthur, his expression changing. Even though the glory of the dual contract was still there, this gentleman did not dare to take another step forward. As the younger brother of the old lion, Barrow was considered a waste by outsiders. Of course, in a sense, this was true. But Barrow relied on his family background and knew a lot. At least, the physique shown by the Nanlos medium in front of him made him feel desperate. I'm afraid only the golden lion cat in the past can be compared. The moment this thought appeared in his heart, Barrow's courage collapsed. Our Lord Barrow does not want to be hit in the face by a fist as fast as light. Of course, our Lord Barrow does not want to give up the advantage in front of him. After all, he is not alone. If you dare to hurt me, my brother will not let you go, Barrow roared. The moment this sentence came out, even with Arthur's temperament, he was stunned for a moment. You have betrayed the old lion, and launched a coup in the entire inner bay then. You actually need the old lion to help you out and protect you. People can be shameless, but they can't be so shameless. Right? Arthur has seen many thick-skinned people, but it is the first time that Arthur has seen someone as thick-skinned as Barrow. Mystery on the side was even more stunned. Obviously, Barrow's shamelessness refreshed the old lion's young son's 3 views. Not only the old lion's young son, but also the people who were concerned in the St. Joan of Arc Women's College and the nearby streets. All of them were refreshed. People looked at Barrow in disbelief. It was as if at this moment, people really knew this gentleman. But soon, many people had a sense of realization. The Barrow in front of them was still the helpless Barrow in their memory. Even though he looked powerful, he was just an empty shell, like a paper tiger. No, it should be more accurate to say, a paper lion. Well, that's not right either. Though look yesterday, it's obviously a mouse. Paper mouse? When they thought of this adjective, the faces of the people around them became strange. It seems that mice don't need to be described as paper. Right? And just when the people around them were full of strangeness, Arthur took action. A young man as humble as Arthur could not tolerate Barrow's shamelessness. He stepped forward and raised his hand, and slapped him. Paw! The slap was loud, and the whole street heard it. Barrow was slapped so hard that his feet left the ground, and he was spinning in the air. It was like a spinning top being pulled up. After spinning 3.5 times in the air, Barrow fell heavily to the ground. Wow! He opened his mouth, and his teeth mixed with blood fell to the ground. Barrow covered his swollen cheek, and shouted with a leak in his mouth. "You dare to hit me? You dare to hit me? Do you know who my brother is?" Barrow's words were so unbelievable. So much so that, when Arthur hit back with the second blow, he added a little more force. When he slapped the first time, Arthur didn't use much strength. He was afraid of killing the other person directly. It wasn't that he wanted to spare his life, but he needed the other person to cooperate. But for the second slap, he couldn't help it a little. Under the premise of not affecting his plan, Arthur increased his strength and directly slapped Barrow away. Bang! Barrow flew up and crashed into a house on the street. Boom! The two-story building collapsed directly with Barrow's impact, and the smoke and dust became more and more noisy in the falling bricks. But this could not cover up Barrow's roar. "I will not let you go. How dare you hit me?" Amid the roar, Barrow crawled out of the smoke and dust. It was not that he did not want to stand up. It was that he could not stand up. After trying several times, Barrow felt dizzy and fell down, and just started to crawl. This scene made many people laugh out loud. The embarrassment of Mr. Barrow was really ridiculous. But what was even more ridiculous was that it was such a person who actually launched a coup in Niwan. A few people laughed, and their faces became strange. They thought. However, more people still laughed heartlessly. Bistry was one of them. The old lion cub looked at the crawling Barrow, and he couldn't laugh no matter what. At this moment, he even fell into self-doubt. He doubted whether the world in front of him was fake. If it was true, then what was Barrow at this moment? But if it was false, then all his previous assumptions, various plans, what about the arrangements against Barrow? A one-man show? The imagined Barrow should be patient, sinister, with multiple arrangements. But the real Barrow is just a clown. However, this is not important. The important thing is that he was almost killed by this clown. Is he worse than a clown? The old lion cub stood there in a daze. Until Arthur put his hand on his shoulder, the young man came to his senses. "Sorry, Sir Kratos, The old lion cub wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to say it. Arthur laughed. "Feeling ridiculous?" "Yeah." The old lion cub nodded. "Don't be ridiculous, this is the world you have seen. It is ridiculous and unrealistic in itself. Because it is just a makeshift troupe. Anyone can stand up and sing a song. But the result is a full house of applause, or being thrown rotten eggs. It depends on the strength of the person on the stage," Arthur said, shrugging his shoulders. "So Barrow was thrown rotten eggs?" the old lion's son asked subconsciously. Arthur immediately became serious. He said, "No, he is a rotten egg." The old lion's son blinked, looked at Barrow who was crawling again, and immediately felt that Arthur was right. At the same time, Barrow also looked at the old lion's son. At the moment when the two looked at each other, Lord Barrow immediately shouted, "Bistry, have you forgotten the glory of the Golden Lion family? Even if I am a traitor, even if I made a mistake, I am a member of the Golden Lion family, and I should be punished by the Golden Lion family, instead of being insulted by an outsider." The shout was loud. The people around frowned. They felt that Barrow was right. The long-term shackles of thinking not only bound their wisdom, but also confused their eyes. This is not their fault, because they are in this era. Even the old lion and his young son couldn't get away. The old lion and his young son certainly wouldn't make a move, but the struggle in his eyes was obvious. Barrow, who saw this scene, almost laughed out loud. "Fool! A bunch of fools!" This Lord Barrow was proud again. He seemed to have found a chance to survive. Subconsciously, Barrow looked at Arthur. Looking at Arthur, who had a calm face, and even a slight smile on his lips, he immediately said viciously, "You are not qualified to judge me." The smile on Arthur's lips became more wanton. The young psychic whispered, "Really?" As he whispered, gold began to flash.